Written by Michael Angel Loaiza Jr., Salem. Let the Witch Hunt Begin. Introduction. A man or woman who is a spiritualist among you must be put to death. You are to stone them. Their blood will be on their own heads. Leviticus 20:27. The cowardly, the unbelieving, the vile, the murderers, the sexually immoral, those who practice magic arts, the idolaters, and all liars, they will be consigned to the fiery lake of burning sulfur. This is the second death. Revelation 21:8. The words cited from the Old Testament make me chuckle because they blatantly shed light upon the self-righteous hypocrisy and the immense lack of logic that still permeates within society today. It simply states, if you do not believe in who I believe, the one and only God, you should and will die. All idolaters who idolize a God that is not my own shall burn in hell, but I shall pray for you as you live a life in sin, because I'm a good person that knows better and truly does care about your well-being, despite condoning potential violence and punishments to the mystic entities and spiritualists that I say not to worship because they are not who I worship. Odd, isn't it, this way of thought? These beliefs we hold so true to our hearts and minds oppose what true religion is: individuality, spirituality, love, kindness, an innate interconnectedness, and an understanding to never truly understand the great mystery. Within this, there may be the absolute meaning to life. It's a connection to the formlessness and unstructured state of being that cannot even be articulated by the sum of best poets, myself included. From the beginning of time and way before the Common Era, there have been people attempting to rob the individual freedoms and rape the solitary mind, whether it wear the mask of religion, government, false activism, or institutions. The congregation of flaming egos attempt to burn all that oppose it, with the hopes to control and conquer everything in its sight. They appear to have a stable grasp of what is ungraspable due to their own subtle fears, but live and react out of primitive instinct. The collective will attempt to label and identify what is of this world, its purpose, and why you, the people, should value their dogmatic morals and also make them your own. For their way is the only way to them, so they tell themselves. But if there is one thing that I assure you, it is that their way is not the only way, nor is it wrong, nor is it right. Spirituality, when preached in the form of institutions, quickly becomes corrupt within the name greed. This doesn't always have to operate within the context of money, because the ego doesn't have a physical bank. Anything that attempts to halt the individual is a lie. Anything that attempts to order the individual out fear is a lie. Anything that orders rather than teaches is a lie. Anything that distracts from the present moment is a prison, and two, a lie within a lie. That being said, all that instructs merely ceases to be the great teaching of living lives within spacious presence. They say history repeats itself, and this couldn't be truer. History repeats itself through the hysteria that created it. There is a contemporary witch hunt going on. There is mass hysteria. There is condemnation in the name of a new God, and that God is not out of some sacred ancient scripture or mythological book. That God is now the state. Tyranny is growing as God and the sanctity of individualized religion continuously gets raped to the name of greed. Take back control of your mind, body, and soul. Become whole. Become free once again. Return home. Michael Angel Loaiza Jr. Chapter 1. A dirt-covered face mask lies near a cigarette butt on the cobblestone grounds of Salem, Massachusetts. An old decrepit graveyard sits with spiked wood fences surrounding it in the far distance, as if they were built to keep Dracula out. A bouquet of vibrant flowers lies on a grave and stick out amongst the grayness, scattered between the frumpy tourists and the eccentric goth crowd frolicking around the rich history of Old Salem. All know of the Salem witch trials back in the 1600s, but many do not know of the hidden stories and history behind it that is still covered up to this day. Like many government cover-ups, there is still much to be unburied. As history attempts to recycle what is untrue, the truth then comes with utter vigilance and turns reality upside down. A grave may seem settled, but when turned upside down, it is rather unsettling. Speaking of which, tourists walk with no trepidation of waking up the decaying bones of their once fellow living and breathing beings. In the middle of these busy and historic witchy streets, three preachers speaking the name of their Lord Jesus Christ stand in the center near a sign reading Lyde Street. A witch dungeon sign sitting right beneath it points an arrow to one of the busy tourist attractions. The God-hungry creatures hold homemade signs reading Sin Awareness Day. Hopeless, need prayer. Evolution is a lie. Hate crime to let sinners go to hell with no warning. Little do they know that hope is one of the most poisonous pills one can swallow. The longing for change, the desire for something different. This is the very opposite of the kingdom of heaven lying within. Working in the now later produces the how. This is being. Nearby the preachers is a slab of concrete with the faces of those who were wrongfully accused in the Salem witch trials. Jesus doesn't want you to die and perish to living in an eternal fiery hell. He loves you and wants you to worship him, the King, the one and only true Son of God, Jesus Christ. He wants to save you and heal you. We are his messengers of faith, and we just want to help you no longer sin. The thin and studious black preacher stands upon the planter's concrete wall, while his off-the-street hobos that are holding his signs nod in approval to his message. Tourists film them on their phones and shed some banter with them. "Can't you just let everyone have some fun?" someone yells. "Hell isn't fun," preacher replies. "You're living in your own hell and you don't even realize it." An eccentric stranger in ripped and stained clothes witfully replies, appearing behind him with a gentle voice. "You resist and repress all that is a part of you and negate life and its mysterious meaning," he says with a Buddhistic smile. This dude is seemingly, to the eye, on some other blissful planet. For the first time in the preacher's life, he actually actively listened to the colorful stranger with opposing views. This may have been the powerful energy exuded from the passerby, or even his own formless spirituality, that innately led to this childlike curiosity about the philosophical statement that the wise person had made. There wasn't an unsureness about his beliefs, but rather for the first time an openness to someone else's, thus realizing that his truth may not be the only truth, but right now they are apparently right for him. The preacher then quickly shakes off his brief open state of presence and robotically replies, "I'm living in the light of God." Conditioning quickly prevails, and the ego steps forth. The teaching stranger nods and smiles, walking off on a cloud. The preacher watches and then gets hit in the face with an ice cream cone. It drips down his thick black frame glasses. A group of teenagers zip off on their bikes while chuckling and nervously pedaling off. The obvious culprits, the Jesus hobos holding the signs, chase after them. The kids book on by Salem police, and they too then chase after them. Preacher wipes his glasses with a napkin and looks around disappointed to people laughing at him. A pasty hand with black nail polish reaches out with a clean cloth. Preacher looks to the heavily tattooed teenage girl, dressed up in all black, including her makeup. A pentagram hangs from her neck and is nestled between her bountiful cleavage. He stares to her with kind eyes and takes the cloth. She sheds a genuine smile and then walks off. The preacher locks eyes with a wizardly-looking man standing outside of the magic shop across the way. He has long dreads that hang out of his top hat. The preacher looks to him conflicted and then decides to walk off. It surely is that time of the season in Salem, Massachusetts, a time when you can listen to the zombies and be in a live music video. It once was a time for festive masks during the tourist-packed October year, but now walking the streets are a new type of zombie. Blue surgical masked zombies scatter the view between the festive Halloween masks. Michael Myers, Freddy Krueger, a vibrant pumpkin-suited man, and even elves. There is an array of Dionysian creativity in view. The streets are flooded with people of all shapes, sizes, and spirits. There is still freedom alive within the artistic streets of Salem, but tyrannical powers have definitely stunted its artistic growth with their imposing communist limitations and fear of man-made germs. This sickness of the mind is too flourishing in most parts of the world. The Good Earth Magic Shop sits in the middle of Lynn Street, not too far from the Salem Witch Museum. Two Salem college girls giggle and stroll through the foot traffic. Emily, a curly-haired innocent doll of girl, and her best friend Tabitha, a mixed-raced, doe-eyed beauty, enter the festive magic shop. Incense fills the noses of all who pass by, burnt sage and the smell of sweet cinnamon. This magic shop is beyond time and is truly one with the nature. It is beyond the sects of mysticism and absolutely present within the reality of Mother Nature herself. Everything herb, stone, and flower is of great use, and though there is a wall of commercial spell books for the tourists, this place is truly meant to heal the mind, body, and soul by way of innate mystical instinct. Even the decor itself is of nature. Leather swing chairs hang upon large trees that grow throughout the store. Their branches are used to hold necklaces and brace shelves with crystals and herbs. There's even a large cauldron with red oak shelves behind it, and glass mason jars containing all different kinds of medicinal herbs and teas. Tinctures too sit, pink, red, green. Some hold small roots and petrified flowers. What a truly unique store this is. The two girls grab a few different colored crystals and make their way to the register. A darkly cloaked, blind black man with long dreads nestled in a top hat gazes to nothingness. His piercing gray-blue eyes, that are seemingly blind, looks past them while the girls hand him their items. He's silent, and his presence is calming. They both stare up to him, pausing for a moment, studying the pins and constellations decorating his worn suede blazer. The girls hand him money. Emily searches her coin purse for exact change, and then a quarter rolls out onto the counter towards the man. He calmly catches it between his two fingers. The girls look to one and other confused as to how he knew exactly where it had rolled to. The girls exit the store amidst the heavy foot traffic. "How the fuck did he see that coin?" Tabitha says with a big, "What?" type of grin. "That's the only thing that you think is weird?" Emily raises her eyebrows. "He was counting money and working at the register." Tabitha kinks her head sideways. "Oh shit, the things we miss." In the alleyway, a cloaked being stands and watches from a distance. It's a reaper-like costume, minus the sickle. Their eyes follow the girls as they walk through the crowds of costumed people. Now, mind you, there are some odd cats walking the street of Salem, but things have become slightly different. There's been many disappearances around Salem University, many of them being young girls. With the rise of depression and anxiety, due to the mind raping of the news and the isolation of the pandemic, many haven't truthfully questioned as to why people have been going missing. Like most things wrong in society, they've simply been putting a band-aid over it, but band-aids eventually fall off. Outside of Salem and in the dense woods, light projects between the tall, almost bare trees. An array of colors exudes a vibrant hue amidst the skeletal limbs of the old swaying trees. Three young girls dance in a jointed circle holding the hands of one another. A shrine consisting of gems, animal skulls, pieces of earth, cloth, and fermented bottles lies in front of them and glimmers from the warm sun. They chant a witchy poem together. "We give kindness to the world, from the shining stars to the vast and mysterious sea, for my brothers and my sisters, for you and for me. May the masks of evil be lifted from all faces. May the freedom of life be grasped by all who embraces. Let all be free like the falling leaves. Let all be free with the power of the trees." The girls take a vintage cassette player and play some old music from the 1940s. They smile to one another. The gothic black-skinned girl looks to her obvious waif-thin striking partner in a smitten daze and then kisses her fiercely. The third friend, a pale and ghostly girl, looks on nervously, but is curious. She begins gently touching herself beneath her long, draped, silky red robe. She crosses her legs and squeezes her thighs together while sitting on the rock, secretly pleasuring herself. Kat, her chocolate-skinned friend, notices and then looks to her petite partner, speaking to her with her alluring eyes. They both slowly walk over to the naive girl. Kat takes the lead and kisses her innocent friend, parting the red cloak that she wears. Their wet lips pucker. Kat pulls back and the pale girl is beside herself. Her heart palpitates with bliss. She then reciprocates and kisses back Kat with a wave of tongue, wild and hungry, like a repressed vixen. Kat pulls back the pale girl's hair and reveals her earring. "La mère," it says. Kat's lover bites her bottom lip and watches with intent. Kat pulls back and bites La Mère's bottom lip. She then turns from her now rosy friend's cheeks and moves back to her innocent and frail, eager lover. La Mère now watches as the couple begins to kiss softly. Kat lifts up the long cloak of La Mère, revealing her velvet-smooth legs and lace-black panties that contrast her supple, milky body. Kat runs her black-painted sharp nails upon her virgin friend's leg and then slowly dances her fingertips atop her laced panties. Kat then starts gently rubbing La Mère on the outside of her sopping wet underwear. La Mère's legs faintly buckle while kissing her tantalizing friend. Kat tastes the wetness from her innocent friend's soaked panties and then places it into the mouth of her hungry doll-like partner, who too then eagerly tastes herself. Quickly her undergarments drop to the floor and Kat begins to taste her partner even more intimately, licking every crevice of her fingertips. All of the girls quickly become unclothed as a Dionysian orgy ensues. Hands and orifices all become entwined while not knowing who's who. All has become one in the most intimate of ways. Candles burns alongside the heavy blanket that the girls canoodle upon. Kat and her partner, the sexual leaders, both pick up one of the candles and drip hot red wax onto the pale girl's body. La Mère moans in awe as the wax faintly smokes while kissing her skin. The tape in their old cassette begins to make an uncomfortable screeching noise. La Mère sees something out of the corner of her eye, which takes her out of this blissful moment. Her ears too perk from the screeching tape. La Mère rises from the orgy, while her friends continue to make sweet love, absent and clueless of anything outside of themselves. La Mère curiously looks around and listens to the tape screeching in the cassette player as she nears it. Crows fly in and perch upon the trees, along with turkey vultures. It's as if they know that food awaits them. La Mère looks to them and listens to their goosebump-inducing caws. She opens the ear-piercing cassette player, stopping the noise. Swoosh! An arrow with a pentagram ingrained into its end sticks out of her right temple. Faint blood trickles onto the ground as the girls continue to make love, still clueless. La Mère briefly hobbles and then falls to the ground. Thump! Kat hears the thump and nervously looks up from between the legs of her partner. Mur? She looks to her friend as she shakes on the ground. Kat then sees a hooded being in the distance drawing their bow and arrow. Fear strikes. Kat and her partner quickly run off naked into the woods. During the kerfuffle, the candle falls and flames quickly catch onto the blanket, igniting it. Soon the fire, too, engulfs the dead girl's body as rigidity begins to set in. A crow lands perched on the arrow sticking out of the girl's head and pecks into an open bag of potato chips, taking one and then flying off. Kat runs through the woods with her thin counterpart. She nervously looks over her shoulder. Janie, what the fuck is happening? I don't know, Janie pants and yells. Janie trips and falls hard to the dirt ground. Kat quickly turns and helps her up. They approach a tall concrete tower that's covered in graffiti. It's some sort of old smokestack that was once used for burning decayed wood. The girls nervously look over their shoulders to see the hooded being. First, the being appears on the right side of the woods, and then upon glancing a second time, they appear on the left. There may be 2, 3, or even 4 hooded hunters. The girls enter the tall smokestack through a little broken doorway and climb up the rusty, decrepit staircase that is wrapped around a dead oak tree. Kat drops to her knee as her foot slips between a cracked stair. The wood splinters around her leg and grabs hold like a Chinese finger trap. Janie quickly helps her up as Kat groans in pain. The girls get to the top of the high tower and anxiously look around to see where this being is. They are nowhere to be found. Kat cries, "Where the fuck are they?" Janie nervously looks on. "I don't know." Scrapes cover both the girls from head to toe. Kat notices a large splinter sticking out of her calf. She pulls it out. It's longer than she thought. Blood pulses out of the inch-deep gash. Kat sniffs the air and smells something. She turns and looks to see that smoke is coming from the bottom of the tower. Kat and Janie lean over to see that a flame is growing larger and larger. This smoke tower is easily 4 to 5 stories tall, and the dead tree is burning quickly. "We need to get down." An arrow abruptly hits Janie in the neck. She's stunned momentarily and looks to her lover with a final glance. Kat stares in shock as she watches Janie hobble and then fall backwards off of the tower. "Thump!" Kat cries and hysterically howls. She nervously looks around the area to see where the arrow came from, but there is no one in sight. It is just silent woods. She looks behind her to the quickly rising fire, and then, with no other option, decides to scale the rocky building. An arrow hits the stone wall as her naked body climbs down. A spark briefly exudes from the razor-sharp metal tip hitting the concrete. After getting about 10 feet down, one of Kat's hands slips, and she falls onto a pile of dense wet leaves. Crunch! The wind gets knocked out of her. She gasps for air and then nervously crawls while scraping her knees and elbows on broken glass and very sharp rocks. Vultures now fly high up above, circling, waiting. The hooded being appears behind her and slowly walks to her as she cries and crawls away in fear. Mud and old blood stains this person's deep black boots. This evil being holsters the arrows, and faint sunlight sheds a view of the mask beneath the hood. It is a decrepit witch. The face is as if it is made of wax and was melted. It is the melting face of a burning witch. Kat pants and frantically crawls, digging her fingers into the mud while trying to get away. She whimpers and cries, "Please! Please!" Begging for her life, she looks up to the frightening entity. The masked killer slowly approaches her and takes out a glimmering dagger. Kat approaches a large drop, and several feet beneath it are raging waters. With her last ounce of strength, she pulls herself over and vanishes into the raging water. She is quickly pulled into an open sewer grate with a heavy running current. Kat is taken by the flow in a blink of an eye. The masked being stands and stares to the thrashing water for a brief moment. They then turn around and walk away. The killer grabs the body of Janie at the base of the tower and drags her by her left foot. The masked being approaches the original scene where the feminine orgy and playful spells had taken place. Now all is burnt and has become glowing ash. They take the arrow from the head of the now burnt girl lying on what's left of the burnt blanket. La Mere's earring glows in the dusted embers. The masked being takes the two girls and strings them high up in the trees, with ropes imprisoning and guiding their arms. The two dead girls hang crucified amidst the bare forest. Blood drips onto the cool ground while their loose necks droop forward. Their hair covers their face as a dense fog begins to fill the forest. La Mere burnt and blackened, Janie covered in scrapes as blood flows from her neck wound to the ground. The vultures begin to swoop in and land in the pool of innocent blood. Chapter 2. Hey guys, welcome to Obscure New Jersey, where we debunk all of the paranormal and mystic myths in the area. On today's show, we're going to investigate the Mount Laurel witch trials. Many of you have heard of the Salem witch trials that happened around 1692, but we also had some occur in our good old Garden State. There are rumors that it was just a spoof that Benjamin Franklin printed in his paper, the Philadelphia Post, but being that it was only 40 years after the Salem witch trials and only 240 miles away, I don't see why it wouldn't be viable for a sanctioned witch hunt to occur in the area. In fact, I'm sure there have been plenty of undocumented occurrences of witchery due to the fact that people were ashamed by their actions, meaning falsely condemning of a group of people with opposing beliefs. They felt foolish. Very similar to what's going on today with all of the mandatory vaccination stuff, but hey, let's not get political. Actually, historians argue the first documented government cover-up stems to the Salem witch trials. At the time, Massachusetts Governor Phipps banned the sale of all books about the witch trials. He even hired and endorsed a friend and minister to write a book of their own that justified their barbaric actions to the death of wrongfully accused civilians. Thomas, a thin, shaven-headed, vibrant personality, sits on his deck in his flannel robe, holding an oversized cup of coffee in his hands, while speaking to the two cameras set up. He has a very popular, haunted web series that debunks anything and everything paranormal. Obscure New Jersey is even written on his grand mug. So let's get started, gang. Thomas rises and walks over to the camera, shutting them both down. He briefly gazes to the vibrant autumn colors. Many leaves have fallen, but enough vermilion leaves still decorate the trees. He patiently watches the leaves fall to the ground. Great depth fills his eyes as they well up with tears for reasons yet explained. Thomas walks with his camera in the woods and speaks into the mic mounted above while he records. Hilltop Reservation beholds an odd history. There was an orphanage, a sanitarium for tuberculosis, and even a sane asylum where actual lobotomies were performed. The buildings are now all demolished. Mostly just concrete foundation is left standing. There were many underground tunnels, but most of them have collapsed. Within this place, deep in the woods of Mount Laurel, there's supposedly a well where the witches were tried and thrown into to see if they floated, which is an oddity to me, because what's the difference if they float or drown? If you can swim, you're most likely going to float for a while, but if you can't swim, you're going to drown. It's quiet upon the tall hilltop. The sun shines bright and is muffled by fluffy gray clouds. Rustling leaves flood the ears. Thomas walks down a concrete road that leads to a dirt path coming to many forks, but seemingly knowing where to go, while occasionally glancing to his phone for navigation. He's a charming, cool cat, and it's obvious as to why he's a successful video creator. 1 million subscribers is some feat, and horror fans pay much respect even despite Thomas debunking their favorite lore. Thomas searches and searches through the woods, crunching on fallen leaves. Crows caw up above. They say that a heartbeat will lead you to the witch's well. But I'm listening, and I can't hear a thing other than these leaves. Don't get me wrong, it's beautiful, but it's not what we're looking for. Or is it? He spoke too soon. Thomas's ears perk up, and he looks to the camera, raising his eyebrows to the sound of the heartbeat, and then begins to follow it. Now there can many reasons as to why that sound exists. There can be a hole in an old underground sewer system, and any rainfall that collects and flows then makes a resonating sound resemblant to a drum. Ba-bum, ba-bum, ba-bum. Thomas ponders for a moment. Okay, maybe I can't think of many reasons, but that's a pretty solid and reasonable one. Or it may just lead us to the witch's well. He makes a sour face and smiles to the camera, being goofy. My teeth look good. I got them cleaned just for you, obscure New Jersey fans. Deep cleaned. A needle in the mouth and everything, because my gums were dirty, and I didn't want to be slurping Jell-O by age 50. And of course, they need to be pearl white for all of you. Thomas continues to wander through the woods. He listens to where the heartbeat leads. A maze of vines paints the way for Thomas. It's an odd formation and looks as if it was intended to confuse an explorer or an intruder. In the depths of the woods, he sees a limestone altar covered in vines, and it reads, "Holy Place." It looks as if a roofless mausoleum stands. It's not even tarnished with graffiti. That's how far set back this place is. Rebellious teens don't even bother to trek to it to vandalize. Thomas gazes to it in awe. He aims his camera and grabs some footage, then turning it back to himself. The heartbeat is very loud. It's the only thing felt within the ears. Even the wind and the rustling leaves are no match. This is weird, I'll tell you guys that. I'm actually kind of creeped out being alone here. I'm supposed to knock on the witch as well, and whoever was left down there is supposed to knock back. I don't know about you guys, but I want to solve this. I am going to knock. Thomas places the camera down and walks over to the tall altar. Vines wrap around and reach to the sky, hungry for sun amidst the heavily treed forest. He bends down and looks back to the camera, placing his ear against the altar. The wind picks up and creaks the decrepit trees surrounding him. The crows caw and continue to peer down from up above, their infectious harmony growing louder and louder. Hungry turkey vultures fly high overhead. There is a great energy here. Even the creaking trees seem to be synchronic, harmonizing an eerie sound that is one with the earth. Nature or something hovering over it appears to guard this place. It contains an invisible energy that gives a rise to the faint hairs upon one's neck. Thomas knocks. 1, 2, 3. He listens. He knocks again. 1, 2, 3. Nothing. He rises to his feet and walks back over to his camera gimbal, picking it up and talking into it. I had high hopes. I did, really. But sometimes we get lost in our own expectations, only to later be disappointed. A ghostly growl from the depths of a hollow stomach is heard along with a hard knock. Thomas abruptly turns and then looks back to his camera to see that it's dead, completely dead. He goes into his bag and takes out a spare battery, quickly putting a new one in. Nothing. It's too dead. He utters to himself in awe. What the fuck? Thomas takes out his cell phone to see that it still has some battery and hasn't yet died. He turns on the record button and speaks into it. Okay, so my camera's died abruptly. No battery is working at all, and I'm surprised that my phone even works. There was I hate to say it, but a ghostly noise and then a hard knock. I honestly have never been so creeped out. But I'm going to knock again and see what happens. Thomas again walks over to the altar with his phone in hand, trembling. The wind picks up. The crows and the vultures sit in the trees up above and watch. He begins to knock with his phone in hand, filming himself. The caw of the crows becomes even more angst-inducing as their vibrancy is carried by the wind. A shake to the forest happens, and they quickly fly off. Vultures perched on the tree nearby also fly away. All is now frighteningly quiet within the woods, except for the beat of the heart coming from deep within the earth. Whatever lies beneath the thick slab of limestone begins to shake. Dirt and stone begin to gently shed from the altar to the ground. Thomas breathes. Thomas's phone drops and he vanishes into thin air. Clouds cover the moon as Thomas rakes leaves into a large pile. He's now at a different time and place, clueless to what just happened. Moonlight quickly diminishes. His eyes begin to adjust, but darkness has abruptly become truly black. Fog begins to exude from the pile of leaves, and they look as if they're breathing, gently rising and falling. It's a graceful breath. It's a deep breath. It's a breath that is hungry for the life it once knew. As the faint wind begins to die down, Thomas hears the breath. It grows louder as the silence grows stronger. It sounds as if it is tasting life for yet the second time, missing it, savoring its earthly freshness. Careless, Thomas begins to walk away, but then hears a womanly whisper. He turns his shoulder to see the piles of leaves and behind it a wooden vine-covered fence. Thomas notices the fog coming from the leaves and then sees them continually rising and falling with greater force. An onslaught of voices echo from beyond, whispering all different things, speaking in Spanish, Latin, and Transylvanian catch his ears. It's as if all of those tortured and burnt witches of Europe found the fellow accused American witches in the afterlife, and they also want their voices to be heard in the name of their wrongdoing. Thomas stares in awe. A decrepit creature begins to rise from the leaves. Her figure is slender and womanly. She's covered in thorns, mud, and wet leaves. She contorts her body while moaning as her bones crack. Thomas attempts to run off, but the hands of corpses punch through the earth and rise out of the ground, holding him in place. Crunch. The woman contorts her neck to Thomas and stares to him through her thick, mud-covered mane. She wears a mask of her own hair. Her fingernails are so long that they drag upon the ground like a rake. Thomas stares mesmerized. She charges to him, nearly gliding over the ground gracefully, and tackles him to the floor. Thomas's ears hear the calling of those from beyond the grave. Fear fills his face while he frantically flails. "Get off me! Get the fuck off me!" Thomas stares into the face of the shadowy and decrepit witch as her hands and long fingernails turn into roots and vines, wrapping around his thrashing body. As she nears him, bringing her face closer to his, her breath sounds as if her lungs have holes in them. "I see you," she echoes. Thomas stares in fright as his body becomes encased in vines like a mummy. His screams are muffled as the creature then struggles to get out the words, "Go away." His bulging eyes are the only things visible, as he is continually wrapped in the vines like a cocoon. The creature's dirty hair then covers his eyes, and both become one with the earth, receding into the ground with the foggy mist. A heartbeat thumps as Thomas is sucked into the ground with the womanly creature. Thomas abruptly wakes up in bed. He frantically pants and quickly grabs a glass of water on his nightstand. He chugs it. Thomas rises from his bed and exits his room. Making his way down the dark hallway, he enters into the bathroom. A salt lamp nightlight is the only light, and it is ever so calming. Thomas places his hand upon the wall and relieves himself, taking a long pee and wiping the sweat from his forehead. Screeching is heard. The sound of a clammy hand dragging on a window then follows. Thomas, distracted, doesn't even bother to flush the toilet. He walks over to the mirror. He sees a word being written and quickly turns on the lights. Only his reflection exists while the letters M, E, L, S are etched on the mirror from the inside, seeping out a deep purple, almost red sticky material synonymous with the viscosity of blood. He stares in awe and reaches to touch the sap with his finger, feeling it, then smelling it. It smells sweet and fruity. He tastes it, licking the tip of his tongue, trying to internally articulate its origin. His pupils quickly dilate. The goo then grows from the tip of his tongue onto his mouth and begins to consume his face like a dark purple mask. He frantically tries to rip it from his face, but fails as it engulfs him. Thomas then awakes to himself in the passenger seat of a car. He nervously looks around. Dreams within dreams, thoughts within thoughts, the egoic voice and its torturous plots. Next to him driving is his brother Teddy. His brother looks to him with a shit-eating grin. "I told you they weren't just mushrooms." Thomas nervously stares to him while they drive down the dark suburban streets. "Dude, what's up with you? It looks like you just saw a ghost." "Teddy, stop the car," Thomas nervously says. "Why? I'm hungry, dude. El Pato Taqueria closes in 10 minutes, Teddy eagerly says and continues to drive. "If you have to piss, hold it." Thomas interrupts him. "Stop the fucking—" Their eyes are blinded by quick approaching headlights. Whack! A semi-truck smashes into the driver's side of the car. Their small hatchback flips over several times, tossing their snowboards that were mounted on the roof and eventually landing on its punctured tires after several turns. A body flew out of the impacting truck and lands in the middle of the street. His old baseball cap somehow remains on his head despite his worn work boots being tossed several yards away from the accident. A horn from one of the vehicles is held down involuntarily and echoes at the center of the intersection. A lone stop sign sits where the vehicle ran through. The airbags fill Thomas's view. He groggily calls for his brother. "Teddy," Thomas says, while coughing, attempting to get the wind that was knocked out of him back in. He looks over to see that the airbag on his brother's side hasn't deflated. Thomas reaches over and then realizes his seatbelt is buckled. He quickly unclicks it and attempts to deflate the airbag with his hands, punching it, but it stays inflated. Thomas then keenly takes glass from the broken window and stabs the airbag, puncturing it and deflating it. Blood drips down his hand from gripping the glass while cutting them, but adrenaline is pumping and he feels nothing. His brother gasps for air, choking on his own blood. Thomas looks to his brother's glossed eyes. "Help is coming. Just wait." Thomas stares into his brother's eyes as they quickly become empty and lifeless. Both their bodies grow weak. One empty and without life, and one now barely filled with life. "Teddy," Thomas somberly whimpers. The hood of the car ignites with flames. "Teddy." Thomas's door is ripped open, and he snappishly gets pulled out by big hands. A burly bearded man drags Thomas from the scene. "Help is on the way," the heroic man says while pulling off Thomas. Thomas frantically kicks and screams while his legs are dragged on the concrete. "My brother is in there." Thomas fights the grip of the helping man and frees himself, hobbling back to the car, limping, Nearing it. Boom. It explodes and tosses him back. Thomas wakes up in his bed with sicked eyes. Too many dreams, and none in his favor. A look in his eyes says that these frequent dreams need to stop. Sweat drips down his face. What we dream about is our consciousness speaking to us in sometimes symbolic and blatant language. It is a tool to apply to our awoken state to infinite growth. Our mind and thoughts are to be confronted, accepted, and innately freed. And just as in sleep, psychological time no longer exists. Thomas rises to go to the bathroom. He turns on the lights and looks to the mirror. Nothing is there. His wrists do have markings, grab markings that are stained with dirt. Scratches make their way up both of his forearms. He looks to them confused. An old pronounced scar from picking up the glass and freeing his brother has healed, but it's now risen and slightly pink. Thomas looks to it as he observes his faint pulse in the palm of his scarred hand. When I lost my brother, I became fixated upon death and what's next, or if there's even anything next after all. When I watched the light fade out of his eyes, I wanted to know where it went. That's why I began investigating paranormal places around where I lived. I wanted to find out the truth to what happens to us after we die, or at least find out an ounce of something. I know knowledge is limited and wisdom lives within, but I'd like to see what our consciousness is or is not limited to. The system and its puppeteers will try to numb you because they know, if used wisely, suffering is a tool to the greater good. But if used poorly, suffering is only a tool to madness and its tyrants. The conditioned mind is our biggest self-elected tyrant. If we do not choose to rise above it, then we will be forever lost. No matter how educated one is, no matter how much money one has, if one chooses to be absent of a higher state of being that is synergistic with nature's vibrant frequencies, one then never truly lives because they continually run away from the only moment in life that counts again and again. That moment is this one. That moment is now. A pretty college-age blonde stands outside of an old metallic diner. Its shiny aluminum siding reflects the vibrant hue of the moon. Waitresses on roller skates zip out of the back door with food in hand and make their way to hungry families in their cars. A film plays on the movie screen in the back of the parking lot. It shows an advertisement of a doctor giving a vaccine. Families in the parking lot are gifted a free meal after the locally stationed nurses finish injecting them and band-aid them up. Thomas turns into the parking lot on his motorcycle and passes a sign reading, "Free cheeseburger with your vaccine." Thomas pulls up onto the sidewalk and looks to the blonde. He tosses her a spare helmet, and she hops on. The two ride down windy roads and cow fields. Clouds quickly pass over the vibrant stars. The motorcycle cruises up steep mountains that are so tall that they appear to touch the sky. A silhouette becomes of them as they disappear into the night. Thomas drives onto the grass and goes around a blocked-off gate to a state park. They ride up the windy roads and hills, going higher and higher in elevation. Deer forage for grass and berries alongside of the road, not even fearful of the loud, midnight black Harley's roar. The two stand at the highest point in New Jersey. The valleys and mountains of Pennsylvania and New York sit amidst the Garden State's bare trees and desolate valleys. Thomas takes in the view and looks to the stars up above. Colette, his blonde girlfriend, looks to him and studies him. "Do you ever wonder what this is all about?" He stares in a daze. "We're here, floating on this little planet in the vast solar system within the universe. We're so small. Where do we fit in within all of this? We create ourselves only to die, known or unknown, famous or a mystery, but ultimately a mystery. The brave live and do what they desire to do, but for what? For what? There must be something even greater to what we can perceptively see." Thomas turns to her perplexed. If not, then what truly is all of this? What Thomas has said is way over Colette's head. She's not so much a deep thinker, unless it involves clothes and spin classes, but her bond with Thomas was strong and deep nonetheless. Her eyes hold great concern for him. "You've been very distant the past few months. It's like you're not even here with me," she says. "I'm sorry, I have been lost. I've been having these recurring dreams ever since I went to that place. The witches, well, I keep seeing what haunts me. It's always there, but it's been stronger now, and I don't know why." "We want different things," she blurts out, seemingly ignorant to anything he's speaking of. "What?" he cluelessly replies. "We don't want the same things," she pleads. This has been bottled up within her for quite some time. It's time to move on from each other. Thomas looks to her confused. I don't understand. Why now?" You're losing yourself. These paranormal mysteries were once a cute thing, but they're consuming you. Ever since you went to that place, it got worse. You can't separate them from your brother anymore. They're one and the same. Thomas looks off while Colette continues to reason, and you're searching for a dead end. This is why I couldn't open up to you. Tell you what I've been seeing. Because of this, Thomas growls, hurt. Remember what that therapist said. The only thing he knew was how to write prescriptions. I've researched the minds of great psychologists and looked at their work, and everything I am feeling and experiencing is normal. Yeah, for the first year. It's been too long. Mourning doesn't just leave or have an expiration date. Everyone's different. You can't put a time limit on someone else's pain. Thomas pleads, I'm not living. I go on with my day, despite how I feel sometimes. I still live productively. He thinks deeply while observing her eyes. This isn't about me. This is about you. There's something you're too scared to tell me. Tears fill Colette's eyes as she stares to Thomas. She turns her head in shame. I want to go now. In those words, Thomas knew something wasn't right. All became silent, other than his faint breath. A tear from his wandering eyes falls to the ground and hollowly echoes in the crisp night air. He hands Colette her helmet. Colette wraps her arms around Thomas. He peers ahead, knowing that this will be the last time that he feels her touch. The two slowly climb onto the motorcycle and drive off into the night. Chapter 3. If you're not already aware, we will be mandating face masks until further notice. Mandatory vaccinations will be required for teachers, police, and any form of state or government employees. We will be compliant with our United States government and the diligence of our Surgeon General. It is within our duty to protect the people from this virus, from this disease, and we will implement any measure in order to do so. In God we trust. These words were spoken the year prior by Massachusetts Governor Joe Brandon. Not much has changed other than the fact that half of the police force has quit, along with teachers and nurses, due to the tyrannical mandates. As society began to volunteer themselves as guinea pigs for experimental gene therapies, becoming more and more swayed by the polarized propaganda that they had been fed by the fear-mongering media and its egotistical lobby-happy political parties as well as their corporate puppet masters, more and more unexplained deaths had been occurring, with the death rate at an all-time high in the United States and throughout the world. And though for some reason many still continued to remain fearfully brainwashed, for some reason many people remained in a state of delusion and continued to be subordinate. When an institution mandates something or a group attempts to force something down your throat, peacefully resist and ask why, then listen to what's behind their answer. Inside of the royal blue carpeted office of the state official, a TV extending from his mahogany desk plays. A newswoman speaks. Crime hasn't only skyrocketed in Boston and the surrounding areas. There has also been a string of murders, known as the Pentagram murders. It seems that some say the abrupt letting go of police officers not willing to comply to the vaccine mandates may have contributed to society going even more mad than before. The TV shuts off and recedes back into the governor's desk. Governor Brandon stands at his large window and overlooks the quaint river in the distance. He grinds his teeth, bothered. His pronounced jawline flexes, irked to what the newswoman had said. His suit is pinstriped and perfectly tailored to his lengthy stature. The governor walks over to his stainless steel espresso machine and brews a cup, smelling it and then humbly sipping it. His assistant, James, a bald man with immaculate posture, enters. Sir, there has been more murders in and around Salem. The newswoman on public television, the governor utters in a vexed daze while wiping the froth from his stubble. The one you mentioned last time, his assistant curiously replies. Get her off of the air, he sternly says. His assistant's eyebrows raise. That's not going to be easy. Her father is Rick Owers. That's why she got the show. I don't care if her father is president of the fucking United States. Rick Owers is a dead, once famous journalist. Get her off the air. The governor sternly stares to his assistant. Today, he demands. His assistant nods and begins to exit, but then comes back. Do you feel that we should lift the mandatory vaccinations? He nervously asks. James, they're not mandatory. If you don't want it, you don't have to have it, but you may lose your job because of your choices. The governor replies, while pouring himself some bourbon into his espresso cup. It's been too long, James replies. The governor gives him a petty look and sighs. I'm telling you this because you're my brother-in-law, and I'm tired of you attempting to be a civil rights activist rather than my obedient advisor. And family is family. You know, we have state guidelines to follow based upon national guidelines and recommendations from the White House. I'm aware, James replies. Compliance means more state money. Compliance means more prosperous businesses desire to do business within our state. Governor Brandon continues to lecture. We are now home to one of the largest pharmaceutical companies, and if you want your salary to be where it is and to keep your grand bonuses so that you can feed my nieces and nephews, I suggest you too remain subordinate. James holds in disdain and replies, Yes, sir. As far as Salem goes, the filth needs to be cleaned out, the governor sternly says. I was birthed there and lived half of my life in that place. My family's history goes back to the first settlers at Plymouth. We were the only Middle Eastern colonizers and the only brown people that weren't slaves and subjected to racism because my great, I might be missing a great in there, great-grandfather, was a brilliant businessman and seer of all. He used magnets to filter out the toxic metal from the clay riverbeds. Upon the Puritans coming here, all began getting mysteriously poisoned. My father found out the cause and then made a solution. He said that Jesus had come to him in a vision and given him the tools to save his people. So, just as the witch trials were once a blemish upon Massachusetts history, they now generate millions and millions of dollars a year in tourism for our state. What exactly are you saying? James replies, perplexed. Sometimes God lets things manifest in order to keep order, for the stronger men to step forth. In this case, it was my father. Prosperity and cultural evolution are for those that earn it. My father earned it, and so will I. We do what we can for justice, but we can only do so much. The pentagram murders may end up becoming a tourist attraction, be turned into a film, a book. Either way, it's beneficial for the collective. It's beneficial for the state. It's beneficial for us. It doesn't mean that we don't want to find the monster that's doing it. It just means optimism in the face of adversity. Governor Brandon pats James on his shoulder and then walks out the door of his office. James stares to an old picture on the wall of many of the founding fathers docking upon Plymouth Rock. James opens the door of his home with groceries in hand and is greeted by his wife with open arms. She detects something is off by the look of defeat in his face. What is wrong? She lovingly asks. Your brother's intentions frighten me, he blurts out. His wife playfully replies, He's a politician. What do you expect? When we were 6, he used to litigate why he deserved more time on Nintendo than me, and my parents listened. I don't know how much longer I can do this and work for him, he says, defeated. Teaching isn't an option for you, she replies endearingly. Because of him, I lost my job, and he was even passively rubbing it in my face today about the fucking vaccine mandates. James says, agitated. My brother has always been difficult, I've told you. I was black of sheep of the family all of my life. That's probably why I was attracted to you. She caresses his chest. There aren't many good-paying jobs out there right now, but you do what you need to do for you. She looks to her husband with full support. His giddy, blonde-haired son runs over to his father and into his leg. Daddy! James lifts his doe-eyed son up and hugs and kisses him. You are getting heavy. I ate a whole avocado today, his young son says, proud. It's going to make me grow big and strong. That it is. James stares to his son with love in his eyes. And so are the grass-fed burgers that I bought from the market today. His son lights up and claps his hands. I want tater tots, too. Okay, you got it, his father replies. His wife watches the two with a grand smile upon her face as the vibrant setting sun casts a golden ray of light carrying the specks of house dust. Chapter 4. Kat awakes to the sound of rushing water on the underground shores of a sandy enclave. Her eyes frantically look around as if she's going to soon wake up from this nightmare. The salt water burns her scrapes and wounds from escaping the masked killer prior. Scattered around the sandy area are old bones. It is sheltered by an array of heavily shrubed holly trees. Their red berries exude from their shimmering green hue. She nervously looks around and sees embers from a makeshift fireplace surrounded by both human and animal skulls. Fear quickly fills her. Kat notices a sewer tunnel that is covered by vines. She then hobbles her way to it, only to hear growling across the way. Kat backpedals to the water and then enters it and swims to the opposite end of the cave. She observes a tall and slender beast exit from the shadows. This thing is covered in hair and has the shape of a human but looks almost Sasquatch-like. Kat cautiously dives underwater with the attempt to see anything. Bones flood the rocky and seaweed-covered floors. Her eyes light up in shock. She jumps from a school of fish swimming out of an underwater tunnel from behind her. Following them is a large great white shark. Fright consumes her as she looks to her wounds with rigid eyes while leaching blood into the water. Out of oxygen and with no other choice, she rises to the surface and looks to the shores to see that the beast is now gone. A shark fin quickly appears breaching the surface. Kat dives back down and brazenly enters the underwater tunnel that the school of fish and shark once came through. A rusted door lies against the wall encased in vines. The shark detects the blood and comes to a halt, turning his fin and approaching Kat's blood-scented trail. She now sees the shark approaching and quickly reaches for the rusted door, pulling it, ripping some of the vines and also piercing her skin in process. The door won't budge. The shark is nearing her. Fright fills her and she can't even gasp for air while underwater. The vines snap. Kat quickly enters and the door closes behind her. The shark rams the door and a cloud of orange rust exudes. It even takes a bite at the rusted door. Kat slowly swims back and then turns around to swim off down the dark tunnel. Kat is seemingly safe, but she is running out of breath quickly. At the end of the dark tunnel is a faint light. She begins to swim and kick as fast as she can to that light, but she knows that there is no way she can make it with the little oxygen remaining in her frantic, frail, and injured body. After using every ounce of strength that she has left, weakness begins to fill her. Her arms and legs go weak as they can no longer tread. She attempts to look above her in the small tunnel for an air pocket, and with no choice goes to the top of it. Kat lifts her head up and pokes just her mouth out by chance in a little air pocket encased with mysterious crustaceans atop of it, and breathes in the minute air given to her by fate. There's less than an inch of clearance from her mouth to the coral ceiling. After several breaths, she dives back down and continues to swim. The light at the end of the tunnel is still very far. Winded, she lets out a big air bubble as her lungs become depleted. She rises to the top to see if there is another air pocket, but there's nothing. Her hands frantically flail and scrape the ceiling of the tunnel. Kat's body begins to simply just float as she begins to surrender to death, but then a surge of water comes out of nowhere and propels her forward incredibly fast. As her nearly comatose body is rushed through the tunnel, other tunnels on the side of her are lit up by schools of glowing fish. It's a magnificent, unworldly galaxy under the sea. That ounce of faint light is becoming larger and larger. Kat quickly breaches the surface and exits from the tunnel and shoots out of a waterfall like the cannonball ride from an amusement park and drops several feet. She smacks that surface of the water with her back hard, bringing her back to life. Her eyes grow large while swimming back up to the surface and then coughing up the water from her lungs. Kat's eyes fill with tears as her beet-red face looks around and then makes her way to the sandy shore nearby. The sun is full and beating on the shore. Nervously, Kat's eyes wander the dense island that is in front of her. She notices a wooden sign covered in vines and walks to it. She begins to rip them. The sign reads, "Misery Island." Purple sap soaks her hands, and she smells its sweetness. Out of starvation and dehydration, she tastes it, and then notices an array of plum trees grown all over the desolate island. The girl feasts on the succulent purple plums. After indulging and again gaining some of her wit, she walks with a plum in hand to the edge of the sandy beach and then looks to the opposite shores in the distance. Sounds of slot machines fill her ears. Kat turns around to see that she's inside of an elegant casino. Socialites flood her view in the red velvet bar, with the moonlit ocean in the background. 1920s flapper music plays as this filled bar and casino party all night long thanks to Edison's light bulb invention. She looks around the place in awe. What an array of people, politicians, police, and prostitutes, gangs and tables of people betting, speaking different languages, Italian, French, Russian, Persian. "I've never seen you before," a dapper man suavely says while appearing behind her. He wears an all-burgundy suit and takes his fedora off just to greet her. Kat looks to him confused and slowly touches his face to see as if he's real. "Where am I?" she barely mumbles. "Too much to drink?" he asks, and stares to her, thinking about one thing and one thing only. What's your name, love? She momentarily thinks and hesitantly replies, Candy, but my friends call me Cat. You must have given your mother and father a toothache with legs like that, Cat, he charmingly says. Luckily, you just met a sweet tooth. Oddly enough, this man is so handsome and charming that every sentence he speaks is hypnotizing. Kat continues to stare around in awe of the time that she was somehow transported to. What is this place? Misery Island, Dollface. The dapper man sips his bourbon old-fashioned, and there isn't an ounce of misery here. Another girl occupies his view, giving him luring eyes. He places his empty drink down on a table and walks off to follow his new desire. Kat catches a glance of herself in a horizontal mirror behind the long bar countertops and sees herself wearing a beautiful, fringed flapper outfit. Her beauty is vibrant and sticks out amidst the crowd, but so does her olive skin and exotic features, especially when compared to all of the fair-skinned men and women in there other than the servants. Screams are heard, and an explosion ensues. A woman runs out of the back room on fire. Smoke and flames quickly flood the room. People run and scatter the casino floors. Kat notices the burning woman holding the side of her face, and there's a large scratch running down from the crest of her head to the base of her jaw. The woman falls and gets stampeded by people. Kat attempts to help her but gets trapped in the swarm of people trying to exit and gets pushed out the door. Fire fills the entire casino. As the mob, literally and figuratively, rushes out the door, she sees burning people jumping from the windows into the sea and onto the rocky shores. Kat gets pushed to the sandy ground in midst of the chaos and then quickly lifts her head to see that she's back on the desolate sandy shores where she had started. Plums and pits cover the ground around her. She has eaten a lot of them. Kat looks back to the empty island, utterly perplexed. Chapter 5. In the heart of Salem, an inebriated black girl stumbles out of a bar to the dimly lit cobblestone streets that reflect a hue of the orange street lamps. Are you sure you don't want us to walk you home, Jay? Her equally drunk friends yell from the door of the bar while all leaning on one another for support. Jay's high heel gets stuck between the cobblestone, causing her to trip. She botheredly kicks off her heels and picks them up. She waves to her girlfriends that she's fine to walk alone. They all chuckle at her brief stumble and then get lost in their own conversation. That bitch is hard, her brunette friend says to the group of girls. Jay walks the dark streets of Salem with an alcohol-induced courage. She walks by some shady-looking cats while scrolling on her phone, clueless and careless, to them cat-calling her. Sexy, a long-faced man yells with his pants sagged past his ass. Baby girl, give me some sugar, another one yells. Jay comes to a street sign and a silent intersection. The silence is so strong that the faint ringing in her ears is heard. She's now seemingly lost, despite traveling these streets with confidence several times. Kat quickly closes all of her social media apps and then opens up her navigation. Right turn on Howler Street, the droll navigation says. Jay obeys and stumbles to the direction. Jay nears an entrance to the cemetery as she looks to her phone for guidance. She can go around it, but decides to see it as a shortcut and a place to relieve herself. She begins to do the pee dance. Jay lifts up her sequined short dress and pulls her panties to the side, letting out an abrupt squirt and a long relieving sigh. She hears crunching in the distance and quickly turns her gaze. She returns upright and looks to the grave she peed near and does the sign of the cross. Sorry, Wilhelm, she says, while shining her cell phone light upon the old, oxidized, almost turquoise-colored 16th century grave. Jay notices something in the distance. It's the silhouette of someone or something, but she can't make it out. She then nervously looks behind herself. Upon turning back around, she notices that no one is there. Worry now quickly sobers her up. Jay goes out the same way that she had come in, but then sees the stragglers that were playfully hollering at her now walking towards her. She quickly re-enters the cemetery and rushes through it. Can you guys pick me up? Jay anxiously says to her phone. There's just obnoxious chatter from her drunken girlfriends on the other line. They pocket answered her call. Amanda, Jay frustratedly yells. Hang her head out the window. I just got it detailed. One of the girls cluelessly yells on the phone. It then disconnects. Jay nervously looks to her phone and then notices a sign with the Salem PD's number on it. She quickly dials them while walking on through the glum cemetery. It rings and rings. Salem PD, this is Dispatcher Rice. How may I help you? Hi, I'm walking in the cemetery and these creepy guys are following me. Jay anxiously looks over her shoulders. There are a lot of cemeteries in Salem, ma'am, he replies unconcerned, while scraping the encrusted mustard from his collar. Jay anxiously looks around and listens to the waves crash upon the shore. The one by the sea. She jumps at the sight of her own shadow. The alcohol has definitely now worn off. Ma'am, that's actually part of Marblehead and out of our jurisdiction. I can transfer you to their department if you'd like. Please just send someone, she cries. Are you drunk, ma'am? The pimple-faced and bulky dispatcher replies in a condescending tone. No, she firmly says. I had a few drinks. Transferring you now, he replies in an arrogant tone. She waits as the call rings and rings. She continues to walk hesitantly while on the phone. The phone disconnects. This girl has no luck. Fucking cunt, she begins to tear up while looking to see the shady men approaching in the distance. Low battery appears on her phone screen. The moon is partially blocked by the clouds and the sea breeze is picking up. Jay rushes through the old graveyard that nears the sea. Waves crash upon the shore and obstruct all noises. She continues to look over her shoulder while strongly gripping the phone. Dilapidated graves sit. Green-blue oxidation has occurred on many of the old graves. Jay finally makes it out to the street. Standing in the distance of the graveyard is a cloaked shadow that eerily stands, and its silhouette almost appears swaying in the wind. A teetering cemetery light up above her head briefly lights up the face of the stalker. It is the same melted-looking witch mask of the murder prior. The appearance of the silhouette in the darkness is downright unnerving, goosebump-inducing. Lights briefly shine from the road. She turns to see shining headlights. They belong to a vehicle driving by with an Uber sign. Jay runs into the street to flag it down. They stop, and she frantically hops in. Hey, Kennedy, sorry about the window. This dude's side window is taped up with plastic garbage bags, but he does have some Mentos and Pepsi, along with plastic Solo cups in the back seat to accommodate his passengers, as well as last week's copy of the Salem Post. This nebbish of a man looks like he had just left playing video games to pick up more potato chips, but then realized he had no money, hence the Uber. The Uber driver turns to look to the frantic girl to learn that it's not the girl he was supposed to pick up. You're not Kennedy. He looks to the picture of the frumpy girl on his phone. Is everything okay? The heavy and messily bearded Uber driver replies while chips fall from his beard to his crumb-covered suede seat covers. Please drive, she cries, and anxiously looks out the window. Do you have Uber? The driver nicely asks. Jay fiddles with her phone. Yes, she says, while frantically scrolling. You have to buckle up, though, he replies. Fuck, she angrily blurts. What's wrong? He asks. My phone just died, but I can give you cash. She fiddles through her wallet, but it's empty. Or I can Venmo you. I can't just give you a ride. I can lose my job, he sincerely says. Not if you're helping a fellow person out that is being followed, she pleads. You're being followed, he nervously replies. Yes, there were these guys and someone in the cemetery. She nervously looks back to the cemetery. You're not on anything, right? The driver asks. No, she angrily says. One time, me and my boy Mitchell did a seance on one of the graves, and I swear we saw some shit. He excitedly reflects on his memory. Do you do magic mushrooms? He takes out a bag of rainbow-colored mushrooms. Jay looks to them confused and careless to his question. She turns and peers out the back window. Crash! The plastic window caves in, and large hands wrap it around the driver's head. The driver lets off the brake, and the car screeches off while he flails and tries to get the bag off of his head. Jay screams in fear. The car quickly approaches a large telephone pole. Whack! They hit the telephone pole, and she flies out of the windshield of the vehicle and rolls down the hood of the car and into the street. The cloaked figure stands and stares to the girl's body, lying amidst the broken glass and shrapnel. Smoke exudes from the hood of the tin-foiled vehicle. Fluid leaks from the bottom. The Uber driver's bagged head fills up with blood from the hard impact. The masked person walks through the glass, evokes Jay's survival instinct and fear. Her eyes open, but her body's paralyzed. Crunching echoes in ears while Jay barely breathes on the ground. Footsteps come closer and closer. Gloved hands grab her body and drag her through the broken glass to a path that leads down to the sea. She whimpers and groggily cries. The fact that she's alive and still conscious is a feat. Upon getting to the rocky shores, Jay's eyes frantically look around her as adrenaline surges for what's next. She takes a deep breath, and her legs begin to again move. A white seashell glows from the hue of the moon as Jay leaves a trail of blood on the faintly pink-sanded shores. She grabs it while he drags her through the sand. As they get to the water, the evil being looks down to her with its hood and raises a sharp, long knife. Jay quickly sees the reflective shell on the ground and slices through his groin. The muffled voice of a man grunts and falls. Jay quickly rises and then stumbles, running along the shores of the moonlit beach, away from the cloaked being. She anxiously looks over her shoulders, and upon turning back around, she's blinded by a light. A college-aged beach patroller looks to her as she anxiously hobbles the shore. "Ma'am, are you okay?" He exits his truck. She nervously looks over her shoulders and all around, but the masked being is nowhere to be found. "There's a monster, and he tried to kill me," she cries and shakes in shock. The young man looks around and shines his flashlight throughout the beach. He sees nothing, only rippling white waters that grow higher and higher as the tide rises to the moon's pull. "Come on, we'll get you to a hospital." He compassionately wraps his arms around her and helps her into his truck. The two drive off down the quiet beach. The truck drives over the bloody footprints left behind from the mysterious masked murderer. Chapter 6. Police arrive on the scene later that night as dawn begins to break. The sun slowly begins to rise over the rough and white-capped ocean. A weathered detective exits his vehicle and looks to the carnage of the Uber driver. "What the fuck is this?" he says in awe while looking to the mess. Deep black skid marks that lead to car shrapnel along with a trail of blood from where the girl was dragged. That's where the girl was dragged? They took her all the way to the beach. A young, baby-faced officer stands nearby. "How is she?" the detective asks while inspecting the driver's distorted body. She's a mess, but she's going to be okay," the young officer replies in a stutter. Another officer nearby gets a call and then rushes over. A body of young girl washed up in Marblehead. The officers look to one another with raised eyebrows. A gasp catches their ears. The Uber driver's body begins to inflate the bag still wrapped around his face. The officers startledly look to it. The detective runs over to the car door and tries to pull the plastic from the flailing man. He then reaches for a pocket knife and flicks it open, cutting the heavy plastic from the man's face and tearing it with his hands. The Uber driver gasps for air and grabs the detective by his shirt collar. "Help!" he barely utters. Life quickly leaves him, and his eyes stare into the eyes of the detective. Blood leaches out of a wound from his neck. The tight plastic and seatbelt were keeping pressure on whatever artery was cut and keeping the deep wound closed. "Let's go to Marblehead," the detective says while turning around and walks off to his beat-up, light blue Oldsmobile. These string of murders that the police have labeled as the pentagram murders have had all of the victims that were discovered with pentagrams carved into their chest. The detective has been scorned by these murders personally because his daughter was reported missing at the time of the first murders and has yet to be found. Airplane bottles of vodka and whiskey flood the floor of the detective's car. A yellow-stained pillow lies in the back seat of the car between empty bags of potato chips and coffee cups from the local store. Detective O barely sleeps, and you can see this in his weathered face. His wife, Patricia, kicked him out after his daughter went missing. She blamed him for it. She felt that his authoritarian demeanor is what pushed her away, and blamed him for it. But truthfully, it was the resentment of the lack of relationship that the detective's daughter, Miranda, had with her. Her mother had cheated many times on Detective O, and despite them agreeing to work it out, his daughter resented her mother heavily and acted out because of it. Detective O became concerned and attempted to be more strict with his daughter. Eventually, his daughter ran away. Bodies of young girls then began turning up the New England coast, but the disappearances were happening in and around Salem. That's about when O began living out of his car. All he did was search anywhere and everywhere for his daughter. The officers flash their lights and drive through the heavy traffic at the bridge leading to Marblehead, a seaside town that's not too far from Salem. Tourists tend to stay there because it's cheaper than staying in historic Salem. Lobstermen lifted their cages. They thought they scored a heavy prize. The detective walks with a young Marblehead officer as she speaks, but little did they know. She rips off the cloth covering the bloated and blue body of a young girl. The detective looks to the body. His eyes quickly water, and he drops to the floor. A bracelet dangles from around her wrist, and that catches his eye. A large pentagram is carved into her chest. "Detective, are you okay?" she asks. The detective's rookie approaches and looks back to the distraught detective and the body reading the scene. "Cover her up," he yells to the female officer. "Cover her up." Hiding the body is difficult because of the time in the frigid waters, but the bracelet solidified it. It had the engravings. With love, Dad. Frantic, the detective walks off in a haze. His fellow officers look on to him while he stumbles off. The detective stops to see a silhouette of his daughter standing in front of her with her back towards him. Reality is not as it appears, nor is it otherwise, she says, and then dissolves into the air. The detective looks on lost and then adamantly turns back around and walks back to the body, through the officers that politely attempt to hold him back, then uncovering it. He stares to the bloated body, and tears again quickly fill his eyes. O begins to cower on the ground and sobs in shock. His pain and cries echo off of the roaring sea. Kat lies in a hospital bed and sleeps bruised and battered. Tabitha and Emily stand in the hospital halls and speak to a receptionist. "You can't go in if you're not family," the stern receptionist replies while taking a bite of her cheesy sandwich. Emily stares to her, bothered by her rudeness. "Keep eating that processed shit and you're going to end up here." The receptionist rolls her eyes while wiping her sticky fingers and begins to swipe on her phone. A warm female voice echoes behind them. "They're with me." The young girls turn to see Sister Marie. The posh nun hugs the girls. These young ladies were all raised at Salem's God's Home for Young Girls. The proper nun, lectures the receptionist, standing over the worker with her poised posture. They grew up with one and other, and they have known each other since they could remember. "Apologies, sister." The receptionist changes her mood to the calm but stern nun and does the sign of the cross, while the girls and Sister Marie walk away to the hospital room. The girls all enter the dreary hospital room and stand by the bedside of the sleeping young girl. "We're going to find who did this to her," the nun says sternly. "If God doesn't punish them first, then we will." The girls look to the vexed but composed nun. "We must let her sleep." The girls take a look to their bruised and battered friend. Sister Marie does a sign of the cross and then turns and exits the room. The two girls then hesitantly follow, not wanting to leave their friend. "There have been more and more disappearances since summer break," Emily says. The two girls walk the streets. "I know, it's frightening," Tabitha replies. "Why college girls like us? Half our class is missing." Emily takes in what Tabitha has said and then has a realization. They come to a halt, and she blurts out, "Do you realize that it's only those that are taking the history of witchcraft course?" "What are you saying?" Tabitha questions. "Do you really think that it's some sort of witch persecution?" "I don't know. People have become crazier from the mandates and the isolation," Emily ponders. "Who's to say that someone isn't lurking out there, delusional, some religious, dogmatic, lost, poor soul, or even a cult? It's just been too weird." And the pentagram carved into the chest. "It's fucked up." Tabitha, justifying, replies, "But a pentagram is vague. It was once used in Christianity to represent the 5 wounds of Jesus." "But people don't know that. They think it's synonymous with witchcraft," Emily says. "Maybe we should take time off from school until all of this passes over," Emily nervously thinks. "Yeah, because we're orphans from a convent and can afford the luxury of taking time off. We're lucky to even be going to school." Tabitha says, "With the way the world is going, I need a good job. We can't miss school." Emily shakes her head, bothered. "You're not going to be able to work anywhere if we're dead." "You're just being paranoid," Tabitha says. "Nothing is going to happen to us." "That's exactly what they say in fucking movies," Emily utters. "We're not in a movie, Emily," Tabitha continues, "because if we were, our story would be completely different. Your story is what God gave you. In fact, you have the grace of God on your side. There is nothing to worry about." Sister Marie chimes in while about to get into the back of an old black car. "Do you girls need a ride?" "No, thank you, sister," Emily replies. The nun places her sunglasses on and gives them a nod. She enters her chauffeured car and drives off. "I always hated that bitch." Tabitha looks on with disgust. "She gave us a home," Emily replies. "If they were allowed to still hit us with rulers, she would be the first to grab the yardstick." The girls share a brief chuckle as the two walk down the cobblestone sidewalk. A leering presence hangs over them as they stroll away from the hospital. Emily momentarily stops and feels it. She turns around to look. What is it? Tabitha looks to her. Emily looks around the area confused. Nothing. The girls continue to walk. Sister Marie stares out of the car window while deeply thinking and twiddling her rosary beads. Her drive is ghostly and wears incredibly dark sunglasses despite the overcast day. He looks like Lurch formed the Addams family, but there is nothing comical about him. His white gloves slowly move around the steering wheel while cruising the Salem streets. Kat groggily awakes in her hospital bed. She looks to the nurses and doctors passing by in the hall. A gust from the window slams the door shut. Kat looks to it confused, and then turns back to see a black-gloved hand injecting a green substance into her IV. She quickly looks up to see the same masked person with the old, melted witch mask. Kat puts up a fight and rips off the glove of the being. They put their decrepit hands and nails up to their masked mouth, shushing her while creepily kinking their head. Kat is struck with fear while gazing into the hollow eyes of the beast, and then screams at the top of her lungs. Nurses and doctors quickly storm into the room. They look to the screaming and flailing girl. "Get it away!" she screams. "Get it away!" Kat rips the IV from her arm. The doctors and nurses look around the room. "No one is here," they say while trying to calm her down. "We need a sedation," one doctor says to a nurse. She nods to him. "Please, help me." She continues to cry. "Don't let them hurt me." A needle goes into her arm as her veins pulse. They sedate her. She quickly calms down against her own imprisoned will. The doctor and the nurse look to the girl in relief. Kat's vision becomes blurred. In the distance of her vision is a black shadow, but it disappears as the doctor and nurse move in closer, propping the pillow under her head. Calmness fills her as the drugs kick in. Thomas sits outside on a hard cast iron chair and somberly watches his now former girlfriend take all of her things. She occasionally glances up to him with each pass. He's lost for words and is beyond hurt to speak. The heart palpitates as its once spoken words are restrained. Thomas finds the silence amidst the heavy air. He quickly rises and hops onto his motorcycle, riding off. At the cemetery, Thomas approaches the resting point of his fallen brother. He looks to the missing grass, confused. It's a bare dirt plot that looks freshly dug. What happened? He looks to a weathered gravekeeper. The gravekeeper looks up with headphones in his ears. "Say what?" The frail old man with dirt staining his jumper replies. He walks over to Thomas and also looks to the ground. "There was grass there this morning," he ponders. "In fact, a pretty young woman and I were chatting around here, and not one of these graves lied bare." He shrugs his shoulders and walks off. Thomas is left alone and bends down to his brother's grave, touching the marble headstone. He hears the carving of dirt, and behind him, the gravekeeper stands and writes with a shovel into the dry dirt patch. "What are you doing?" Thomas asks him, puzzled. The man continues to listen to his classical music and robotically writes with the tip of his shovel into the crusty dirt. "Hey!" Thomas yells and rises from the ground. The man snaps out of his daze and then looks up to Thomas. He removes his headphones. "I'm sorry. I don't know what came over me." He calmly replies and then oddly walks off. Thomas looks to what's written into the plot of dirt. Salem. Confusion fills his face. "What the fuck is happening?" he utters. Thomas sits on his motorcycle and overlooks the valley in the distance. The faint lights of the city flash. With a broken heart, he looks up to the moon and its shining stars. Thomas rides through the streets of NYC and the heart of Times Square. It's packed with tourists and people wearing face masks. The city still thrives with foot traffic and new forms of businesses. Custom face masks, virus testing sites, and even cloaked doctors on the street swabbing people. A new form of police arrest those that are not wearing masks and holding anti-vaccination signs. At red lights, people willingly subject themselves to temperature checks. The billboards up above show friends and family getting shots with robotic smiles upon their brainwashed faces. A street doctor wearing a futuristic bird-like bubonic plague mask approaches Thomas and flashes his credentials. "Please lift up your helmet, sir," asks the masked and scrubbed individual. Black scrubs give off an even eerier presence, but the doctors wear black and the nurses red in order to differentiate between each other. The light turns green and Thomas wheelies past them. The street doctor jumps out of the way. Little did I know what the persecution of freedom looked like when I was a kid. This was now the norm in New York City. More and more became separated while the city supposedly was getting healed. Truthfully, it was destroying itself from the inside out, and it was blatant with any sense of logical thinking. I was happy to simply drive through that little dictatorship, the once capital of the world, New York City. But being the beacon for the rest of the world, the city's government and its guidelines slowly crept in throughout other progressive, left-winged extremists. The religious and self-righteous right created a new monster that was all too similar to its own reflection. As the institution's centralized powers realized that faith to an external force was dying and the death of God was becoming prominent in a materialist society, the state and its puppets then took over as the all-giving rights gifting gods that profited from propagating seemingly empowering movements that only filled their own and their puppet masters' bound pockets. They began masking their true intentions by passively giving we the people freedoms that have truthfully been ours since before the beginning of time, and to confusing the minds of the lost with endless choices, with overly identifying with form and gender, pushing the people further away from the formless divine energy of innate spirituality. Simply put, they discovered conniving ways to segregate the people and keep them fighting against one another while gifting them false freedoms and equal opportunities. The individual became lost in the herd and began living within a brainwashed democracy, a mass democracy so sneaky that its antonym, communism, slowly molted into its synonym. Thomas zips on through light after light and bolts to the highway entrance. Streetlights reflect the unique colors of autumn and to the moon's hue. Thomas heads onto the Massachusetts Turnpike. Nighttime in the hospital evokes a dreary sense of isolation as visitors are no longer allowed to enter. The quiet and empty halls hold the unhealthy receptionist still sitting at her desk, eating a new bag of chips and still swiping on her phone through her endless social media accounts. "I'm going on my break," a young Asian nurse says. "You got it?" The receptionist uninterestedly replies, not even looking back up to her. Kat, the injured girl, lies in her bed and watches TV in a dazed state. The power goes out. The receptionist too notices. She speaks into her walkie. "Greg, we got a power outage." She listens to Greg's huffing and puffing back into the walkie. "It'll come back on." She rolls her eyes and utters, "It better be back on." Kat tries to press her emergency button on the controller. It sends a feedback to receptionist, but she ignores it and runs to the bathroom. Greg is in the supply closet, thrusting into the Asian nurse that is supposedly on her lunch break. Apparently, this nurse wastes no time and isn't hungry for food. Darkness fills Kat's room. Water droplets fall and echo into the sink. The drugs have worn off and her wit is back. She's on edge and jumps to every faint noise that she hears. Kat hears a creak at the door and then a knock at her window. She looks to see a bird flying outside and pecking, a little downy woodpecker. A shadow looms over her. She feels its presence and turns to see a needle going into her IV. It's a dream come true. She jumps in fright, but black-gloved hands quickly cover her mouth. Calmness soon fills her as the large dose of morphine kicks in. Her eyes quickly turn from worry to sleeping. Cats eat at the dumpster on the hospital grounds. Endless amounts of canned tuna in a pouch. A security vehicle sits nearby unoccupied. Whack! A body falls onto the hood of the car. The cats scurry away. Cat lies dead on top of the tin-foiled security vehicle with a pentagram cut into her chest. Her hospital room window is open and the shadowy figure peers down below to the lifeless body. Chapter 7. The black preacher sits in the pews and prays to the crucified Jesus statue among the altar filled with holy water. Screams of a woman raise his ears. He abruptly turns his head and rises to run to the front of the stained glass church building. He looks to see Sister Marie laying on the ground sobbing. She shakes in shock and yelps in pain. A seemingly poignant and well-to-do man consoles her, but she quickly gets carried off by other young nuns. This man gives off the very essence of power and shows imposing importance. He wears all white and holds a weathered, brown, leather duffel bag. The black preacher approaches the dapper man while he watches the nun get carried off. The dapper man cleans his glasses off with a handkerchief. "I thought you were in Jerusalem," the black preacher curiously asks. "My trip has ended early, but how profound it was. My brother had told me about what's been happening, and the university also has reached out," he calmly replies. "Is he doing anything about these murders?" asks the preacher. "He's the governor. He has a state to run. I am the mayor, and this town is my duty." "What are you going to do?" preacher asks. Dapper man replies, "One step at a time." Salem, this place, has been learning about witchcraft and praising their paganistic rituals for far too long. and I think that it's reached a boiling point. The preacher speaks. Anthony, don't look for why, look to how, the dapper man says confidently. Father Eli, what do you mean? The sickness brought more sickness, Eli replies. Anthony replies, the pandemic? Those that were once condemned are being condemned once again. Those who don't believe in the ordinance of all will again be persecuted. Father Eli continues. And the world has simply become crazier with the rise of social media. It's chaotic. People have become aware that they live and die, and without faith, they've become beasts, hungry to survive, hungry to find power wherever it may be, even if it is in the lust of murder. They feel powerless and want to have some sort of control over life. Little do they know, they are very much the essence of life itself. Life is uncontrollable, Anthony says. It's controllable if one is one with life. Then the chaos in nature simply looks like the very essence of nature. Mayor Eli declares, what I do know is that the many of the girls murdered were a part of an activist group called My Body, My Choice. A pro-abortion group? Incorrect. An anti-vaccination group. The college has been trying to mandate vaccinations for the new virus, and they've been fighting it. You feel the murderer is going after the unvaccinated? I do, and they're making it out to be about something else, hence the pentagram. It's an easy escape to get what you want. But who would go to that extreme? Because they don't simply agree with their ideologies. Antony asks, perplexed. As we've learned, when safety is threatened, those who want to survive will come forth and take action against those who seemingly oppose their safety. But it's been all over the news that masking doesn't work, and then the vaccines are ineffective and in fact do cause harm. There are corporations that have power far higher than our government. My brother has learned this upon taking office. And if you want to survive, you need not to fight the hand that feeds. Thou shalt not harm others. We do not need to. Others will harm themselves. Eli replies, if you'll excuse me, I must get to the university. The mayoral priest walks off to his third duty as acting professor at Salem University. Anthony gazes to the high ceilings of the church and ponders deeply. Salem University is flooded with police cars. It appears to be that another murder has taken place. Eli approaches the ruckus with his satchel wrapped around him. Edwin, what happened here? He asks a nearby security officer. Professor, the guard fumbles. I wear many hats. Address me as whatever arises. Eli replies with a friendly and calming smile. One of your co-workers was found dead in his office. The officer replies, who? He asks, concerned. Dr. Mystic, the guard says. Eli's eyes wander off as he looks to the sheeted body begin carried away. He begins to walk towards it, but his attention is drawn back to the security guard. Father Eli, the rosary beads that you gave my mother, they broke. Might I have another blessed from you? He anxiously asks. With the way this place has been going, it's very unnerving. It's the evil on this campus. I feel it at night. I see shadows everywhere I look. Eli interrupts him while reaching in his pocket. Here. Eli hands the guard black onyx rosaries. Thank you. The guard does the sign of the cross with a relieved and nervous smile. Eli turns to see his teaching assistant, Blake, a fragile young man with blonde hair and blue eyes, nervously standing behind him. You're back from your trip. Is everything okay? Apparently not, Eli replies while walking off to the police. Blake looks to him with admiration. He seems to have wished for a brighter greeting from his idol despite the circumstances. With a puppy dog face, he's very submissive to his superior and lives off of every order and instruction that he's dealt. He's been his teacher's assistant for several years now and is studying theology. Eli enters class to see a diverse group of students. Tabitha and Emily are included. Some of the students hold tissues and have tears in their eyes after hearing the news. Mystic was a beloved professor by the students and faculty. First off, I must apologize for the loss of your professor. Dr. Mystic was a very kind and generous man. As one of the professors of this institution, and as your mayor, I promise you that we will find and bring to justice the person or persons committing these murders. The doors of the classroom open and Blake appears. He makes his way into the class and sits down in the front row. I want to thank you and wish you the best. Today we will not have class, but hold a remembrance for Dr. Mystic in the gardens. Eli packs up his things and makes his way out the door. The class rises with him. As the sun falls amongst the red rose gardens on the campus, casting a pastel shadow amidst the crabgrass, students and faculty hold candles in their hand and walk through the area. The bell tower in the distance rings and rings, echoing upon the blanket of crisp fall air. "Now the fucking teacher," Tabitha whispers to Emily. Emily replies, "Something is not right." Emily listens to the bells as the rest of the students place their candle on an altar dedicated to those that have fallen. Emily begins to get ringing in her ear. The bell knocks grow louder to her. They begin to vibrate her from the inside out. Her body begins to tremble. Her vision begins to blur. Tabitha notices and grabs her, wrapping her arms around her. Are you okay?" Tabitha asks, concerned. Emily's eyes roll to the back of her head. At some other moment in time, Emily stands on the sandy shores of Misery Island. She turns around to see Native Americans carrying some sort of scaled monster with horns. It looks part lizard, part fish. They carry it to a sacrificial altar and place it down as the beast flails, lifting and throwing two of the indigenous people off of the ground and several yards away. The leader of the people takes a gleaming dagger and stab it into the heart of the beast, dragging down to its navel and opening up the cavity, ripping out its beating heart and slicing it. They then turn to Emily, staring. Fear fills her as some begin to approach. Their white painted faces and red-lined makeup is downright frightening. Emily hears something behind her and quickly turns around to see a massive ship crashing upon the shore and nearing her. Emily rises from the ground. People at the vigil stand around her. She looks up to see Tabitha's concerned face. "What happened?" Tabitha asks, in a sigh of relief to see that her girlfriend is okay. "I don't know." Emily rises up and people begin to back off and go back to the vigil. From across the way, Eli looks to Emily with suspicious eyes while a priest says a prayer for the fallen. Chapter 8. Thomas rolls up on his motorcycle to a small bed and breakfast. All is tranquil amidst the sea of vermilion leaves scattered on the porous ground of the old building. A brick in the side of it dates it back to the 1700s, and the original stone structure definitely shows how buildings should still be built today. Barely even a pressure crack. Upon entering the red lavish check-in area, Thomas looks to a lone bell sitting upon the marble desk. No one is there. He peers all around. An old pack of bubble gum from the 50s, Sweet Chew, it's called, sits on the counter. Thomas rings the bell. It echoes through the hollow halls. A striking young girl suddenly appears to his left, startling him. She sips steaming coffee from a tall mug. "Checking in?" she asks while parting her hazel bangs. He smiles to her as her peach lip gloss stains the rim of the cup. "Yeah." "Do you have a reservation?" she says, wiping the faint moisture from her mouth. "No. You're just the first place I'm passing, so I happened to stop." He places his helmet on the counter. She looks to her reflection in the shiny helmet, studying herself as if she's never looked in a mirror. Confusion fills her face briefly. Thomas stares to her beauty and observes her dazed state. "I apologize," he says while taking the helmet from the counter, thinking that his had vexed her. No, it's fine. I was thinking about something else." Briefly lost in her own thoughts, and again gathering herself, she says, "What brings you to Marblehead?" "Salem was too expensive, and I have a paranormal investigative show that debunks myths and the supernatural." "On the TV?" she says, impressed. "No, online. But it does well enough to pay for this place, so I'm grateful." "Good for you," she replies with a kind heart. "I'm stuck here." "No one's stuck unless they want to be. For now, I'm stuck." A smile fills her face. She scrolls and types on the computer. Room 13 is free. She grabs a key from the cupboard and hands it to him. "Thank you." He hands her his credit card. "There's a horror event at the Peabody Museum tomorrow. All weekend, really. You should check it out." He turns to her. "Thanks. This place is supposedly haunted too. Maybe you can debunk that," she sarcastically says. He looks around to the old gold wallpaper and makes his way up the stairs. "Hey, what's your name?" Thomas leans over the railing. "Claudia," she says with a friendly smile. "Nice to meet you." Thomas clumsily almost falls over the railing, but catches himself. "Be careful," she replies. "Don't forget to lock your door and don't let anyone in, even if they ask." Thomas raises his eyebrows, confused. "Okay, Mom." He smiles and then walks up the steps. Claudia watches him walk off. Claudia walks to a mirror and stares to an empty reflection. She then walks down the corridors to her small room. A yoga mat sits near a large window. She begins to undress, and while making her way to her white yoga mat, stretching and touching her toes, she takes a deep breath and releases it. She notices a red droplet on her mat. Another then falls. She peers up to see a red stain upon the ceiling. Claudia walks the halls with keys in her hand and makes her way to the room with the odd leak. Thomas lies in his bed and stares to the ceiling. The blue hue of the moon gives an eeriness to the odd and old room. He hears footsteps outside of the door. He remembers that he didn't lock his door and rises to lock it, but then decides to peer outside. Thomas then sees Claudia turn the corner. He decides to follow her. Thomas walks the red carpeted halls. The hair rises on the back of his neck, causing him to quickly turn around, but nothing is there. He sees the open door to where Claudia stands over a puddle of blood. What the fuck? Thomas stares confused. Claudia turns around to see him. A man in a blood-stained suit exits the bathroom, wiping his blood-stained mouth. Thomas looks to him in awe. The man looks back to him, wondering what he's doing in his room. The man breathes in deep and smells Thomas's nervous pulse. "Thomas, go to your room," Claudia adamantly yells. The man's jaw hangs upon and fangs come out. Thomas stares, frozen, but then turns around to run. Thomas runs down the hall and peers over his shoulder to see who's following him, but no one is there. Every door alongside begins to open, but it's pitch black inside. Only glowing eyes can be seen as they peer out. Thomas enters into his room and slams the door behind him. He runs to grab his phone and begins to dial 911, but hears a knock at the door. "Thomas," Claudia's voice echoes from outside. Thomas's eyes slowly peer up. "You don't want to call the police?" She lowers her voice significantly. "I'm pretty sure I do." "Lower your voice, please, and let me in." Thomas looks to the corner of the room to see his brother standing there in his ghostly form. He looks to Thomas and nods for him to open the door. A knock makes him jump and then look to the door and then back to his brother, but his brother is gone. Claudia stands in front of him. "Fuck!" He jumps up in fright. "It's okay," she says, trying to calm him down. Thomas backs away from her in fright. "How did you get in here?" "I do manage the hotel." "What is this place? What the fuck was the guy?" "You're special. That's why I let you stay here." "I'm special? Well, what you going to sacrifice me?" "It's not like that. This place is not what it appears to be, and neither am I." "I don't need to be spoken to in some Zen koan or Matrix-like talk. What the fuck is this place?" "This place was built upon the creed of a cult that goes back to times unknown. I don't even know its origin." Thomas's eyes grow large. "I'm high, aren't I?" "That man you saw was a vampire." "Like Dracula?" "Yes, they all of draconian descent." Thomas chuckles. "Okay then. To my knowledge, they have been coming here because Salem is the gateway to another world, a world that the eye cannot see." "A world to what? Where does it go? What is its purpose?" "I have no idea, but they say that there is cure to free them from their eternity. Many have been searching, but I don't know if anyone has found it yet." "There was blood in that room." "They used to sacrifice humans, but vampiric culture evolved and they only hunt animals. Nothing else." "Vampires are progressive?" Thomas sarcastically says. "I'm guessing the Democratic liberals as well." "Salem is a very old place built on the bones to something far more comprehensible than we can grasp." "Why did you let me stay here?" "Your brother. He knows something that I don't." "You've met him?" "He was near you when you checked in." "What are you?" "I'm not quite sure, nor do I know why I'm here. I woke up here one morning and have trapped ever since." Claudia says, perplexed. "Are you one of them?" "I'm not. I'm a ghost, if anything. I have no reflection. I didn't even remember what I looked until I saw my reflection in your helmet." "You've never left here?" "It doesn't let me leave. Every time I left, as soon as I blinked or closed my eyes, I would wake up back here." "What is it?" "I don't know, but I've made peace with it. I stopped trying to leave because there's something that wants me here." "Are you aware of the murders that have been happening?" "They're not in relation to this place. It's something else. These people aren't bad people. They're just trying to become human again and looking anywhere that they can." "Something has been calling to me to Salem, and I don't know what. There's this entity that has been drawing me to it." Sometimes people are called to action despite them not knowing what their action is or who called them to it. Thomas gazes to Claudia. He walks over to her and gets closer. He looks to her and then raises his hand to touch her hair. You can't. He ignores her and caresses her hair and head. She looks to him confused as to him being able to feel her. Claudia looks up to him in awe and then moves in to aggressively kiss him. Thomas lifts her up and throws her onto the bed. She rips open her black blouse, and Thomas begins to kiss her chest and move down to her stomach. She quickly unbuttons and removes her pants and panties with Thomas's quick assistance. His head travels between her milky legs, and she kinks her head back in awe. Claudia is incredibly hungry for love. She pulls Thomas's head up to her and begins to kiss him, tasting herself. She flips him over and climbs on top of him, holding their bodies close as she begins to ride him. Her sopping wet juices drip down his inner thighs as the two begin to twitch as euphoric sensitivity begins while nearing orgasm. They both climax together, holding one another close, staring deep into each other's eyes. The detective awakes to the sound of a pulsing drum in the distance. Waves wash upon his leather shoes, waking him from his daydream. Tribal music is heard in the distance. O hears the sound of wooden scraping and primitive-sounding chants. He sees a torch at the beginning of a tunnel going underground on the island. He approaches it and then walks through the tight concrete corridor. It's covered with cobwebs. The sounds and chants grow louder and louder. He turns the corner and comes to a halt. O then sees animalistic-like people conducting a seance. He stands by the doorway and peers in, reaching for his gun, but he's not there. His holster is empty, and this perplexes him. All quickly becomes silent. The cultish group all turn to him. They wear animal masks, made out of the animals themselves: deer, foxes, wolves, coyotes. On a sacrificial table between them is a gagged and bound young lady that fearfully looks to O with tears in her eyes. The two lock eyes. The masked people then turn away from O and raise a large dagger to the girl, impaling it into her chest, breaking the bone, crunching through the cartilage, and then the organs. O abruptly awakes back in his car. He anxiously looks around the dilapidated streets. Nearby is a street performer drumming away on tin cans and plastic buckets. O reaches for another airplane bottle of Tito's vodka scattered amidst a slew of empty ones. His phone rings. It's an unknown number. O answers it and then listens to odd breathing on the other end. He listens closely. "Hello?" the detective says. An eerie breath is heard, and then faint cries in the background. "Daddy," the voice of his daughter replies. Tears fill O's eyes. "Sarah," he utters. A hand then comes out of the phone and grabs his face. O throws the phone down and looks to it in shock. Nothing is there other than his phone and the scattered empty bottles of vodka. The security officer at the campus sits in his small glass office. Stumbling college students pass on by. There was a football game, and the Salem Cats had won. The security guard wipes the white powdered sugar from his mustache and looks past the case of powdered donuts to his TV screen. Tabitha and Emily walk the streets and make their way to the library. The busy avenue filled with inebriated college kids shows how they truly could care less about a murdering spree in the area. The girls walk up the tall marble steps into the library and enter. The library is eerily quiet, and not one person is in sight. "Isn't it funny that this library is deathly quiet, yet there's thousands of books just hungry to speak to us," Emily says. "What a poet you are," Tabitha sarcastically replies. "I don't know how people intermittent fast. I need to pee so bad right now." The lights of the library go out. "What the fuck?" Emily nervously says. They turn around to see someone standing by the doorway. They quickly turn the opposite way to run and then go between the bookshelves. Moonlight floods through the long, rectangular windows, giving a blue hue to the large library. Its tall ceilings and endless bookshelves appear to reach all the way to the vibrant roof, decorated with its unique crown molding. The girls attempt to open the first door that they see, but it's locked. They peek through the small glass window into the dark librarian's office. Emily's ears perk up to hear footsteps echoing the wood-floored halls, slowly nearing them. They quickly crawl under a table placed between several rows of other study tables. Emily and Tabitha attempt to catch their breath as the footsteps get closer and closer. They see the black boots nearing them. Their pulses begin to pound. Tabitha's eyes start to tear as Emily looks to her, shushing her with her eyes. Water begins to faintly drip onto the floor. Tabitha wet herself. Emily looks to the floor beneath Tabitha, and then turns back to see the masked being, but no boots are in sight. Her eyes search the area, but they see no one. The girls become conflicted as to whether they should stay put or make a run for it. They slowly move the chair to crawl out of the table. Emily then hesitantly rises to see the masked being standing atop the table. She screams, and the being slashes at Emily, slicing the right side of her face. Tabitha appears on the other side and whacks the masked being with a chair, knocking them to the floor. Emily and Tabitha run through the bookshelves to the light of an emergency exit door. The girls frantically look over their shoulders while they run for their lives hand in hand. They near the edge of the shelf, and Tabitha abruptly gets ripped back by her hair, slamming to the ground. Emily quickly turns to see the shadowy being raise a large dagger. This dagger is the very same from the previous murders. Emily immediately takes a large book and throws it with all of her strength to the masked being. Whack! They grunt and fall backwards into the solid oak library shelves. The girls bolt to the emergency door, and the alarm sounds with an ear-piercing ring. Red lights flash throughout the library. The girls bolt out into the college streets, fearful and frantic. "Help! Help us!" they cry. The hefty security officer hobbles through the drunk college kids that are clueless and careless to the frantic girls' screams. Some of the more coherent college girls walking the avenue look to them concerned. "What happened?" the security guard asks. Emily frantically replies, "The killer, he's in the library." Fear fills the security guard's eyes. The girls stand outside of the library while the security guard makes his way inside. "Stay here, the police are on the way," he heroically says while standing at the frame of the grand library door. He holds his flashlight and pepper spray in hand. He enters into the library. The girls nervously look on. "I'm going to the street to wait for the police," Tabitha says. "Come on." Emily stares to the doorway, unsure as to leave the security guard. She feels uneasy, but she decides to follow her girlfriend. The security guard shuts the alarm and looks down the hollow rows of books. He holsters his pepper spray and attempts to turn the lights on, but they won't go on. The guard makes his way through the shelves and takes his keys out, approaching a door, unlocking it to a pitch-black corridor. He turns on his flashlight and makes his way down the eerie corridor. He looks up to hear the police sirens echoing in the distance, giving him some sense of comfort that all will be okay. But he wants to be the hero. The guard makes his way down to the basement, walking down step after step, and then to an opened breaker box. He peers to it, perplexed. "Is anyone down here?" he nervously replies. He walks to the breaker box and turns on the lights. The library then gets its power back. The basement of the library is an old, massive bunker. Tall shelves hold archived books, news articles, tapes, and more. Clunk. He abruptly shines his light to the noise. A roll of film rolls to him, knocking into his boots and falling over to the side, wobbling before finally laying flat on the ground. Another noise is heard, and he quickly looks up. Something passed by out of the corner of his eye, but he's not sure if his mind is playing tricks on him. The guard then follows where it came from and walks between the tall shelves. A shadow follows opposite of him, but he mistakes it for his own shadow. In the front of the library, police show up to the scene as the library lights all turn back on. Emily and Tabitha approach the officers right away. "The killer? He's in the library. He chased us." The young officers look to the frightened girls and make their way to the library. The security guard walks down the dark aisles and nervously shines his light. His hands tremble. The lights to turn on downstairs, and he lowers his flashlight while following the sound of faint creaking. He sees one of the bookshelves placed against the wall directly in front of him, creaking, rocking back and forth. The lights again go out. He quickly turns back on his flashlight. His throat becomes tight as he swallows his courage, taking out his rosary beads, holding them in his hand, wrapping them around his flashlight. He looks to the tall shelf filled with embalmed animals, preserved birds and insects. He peers behind to the crack between it and the wall. The whole shelf gently moves back and forth. He then pulls the shelf and opens a hidden doorway to several tunnels. He stares to it, perplexed. The guard hears footsteps from the entering police upstairs, turning his head to the noise, and out from the shadows comes the silhouette of a figure. Police make their way down the corridors while shining their flashlights cross-armed over their drawn weapons. They make their way in to see the security guard crawling on the ground while hold his neck. Blood shoots out from the side of his hands while he attempts to gurgle out some words, but nothing can even be understood. The police frantically look around the area, but nothing and no one is there. The bookshelf is now sealed shut, and the only thing left is a trail of blood. Eli approaches Emily and Tabitha. "What's happening here?" "We were attacked," Emily says. Eli nervously looks on to the police action. Chapter 9. At the governor's mansion, around a nicely decorated table with a slew of different fixings, James sits across from the governor and a few other powerful foreign officials that are all from China. They have a petite Mandarin translator smiling and nodding to the banter around the table. It seems the president of China knows English very well. A white men in suits that represent one of the largest pharmaceutical companies, too, share the table with the Chinese and the governor. We are incredibly grateful to have a partnership with China and to have the ability to bridge our partnership worldwide, Governor Brandon says with a smile. Chinese bodyguards stand at every entrance of the doorway. Buying the majority of shares of Pharmatech was the best decision I have made, the Chinese president says with a heavy accent. Governor Brandon raises his glass, and the rest follow. James observes the table unimpressed, though the others are too self-engrossed to even feel the energy he gives off. Later in the home, as the servants clean up from dinner, James happily assists them with a smile on his face, while business is discussed behind a grand mahogany door. The Chinese bodyguards silently stand outside of it. The governor exits with the Chinamen and walks with them, escorting them out of his mansion. James, I have the governor's tea, a maid replies. You might want to take it to him. You know how he doesn't like the help in his office unattended. James pleasantly nods and then takes the tea. He approaches the now unguarded office. He enters. James places the personal teapot atop of the desk and notices blueprints on a large architect table. He sees the sketches for a new pharmaceutical building. He flips the pages, and all seems standard until something catches his eyes. Suspicion fills him. He stares to an array of drawn, unground tunnels beneath the large Pharmatech building, and at the center of it is some kind of drawing a sun. He hears a car door shut outside and looks to the Chinese president being driven away. James then flips back over the blueprint to the side of just the building on it. James exits the room. The table is cleared and the servants continue to clean the rest of the area. Governor Brandon enters. Well, that went well, he says with grin, and let's have a drink. I need to get him, James nicely replies. The kid's got soccer tomorrow morning. So be it, the governor says. James begins to walk away. Have a good night. The governor enters his office and looks to his tea on his desk. He then looks over to the desk with the blueprints in the distance. James drives on the highway home and then decides to abruptly take a turn. He approaches the large building being built in the distance. He parks his car and walks to the building. James enters the building to see scaffolds and construction supplies scattered everywhere. He looks around the area and continues to explore. A large door sits with several screws sealing it shut. James doesn't even bother trying to open it. He grabs a screw gun and begins unscrewing. James pulls the door open to see darkness. He turns on his cell phone light and proceeds into the tunnel. It begins as traditional cinder blocks and then turns to stone alongside of him. James looks on the walls and sees hieroglyphs of odd drawings similar to aliens. There are all different symbols scattered everywhere. Sanskrit is written upon the walls as well. James walks deeper into the tunnel and then hears a humming. He follows it and then hears footsteps. He turns and looks to see a Chinese military man aiming his gun at him, appearing from one of the side tunnels. You can't be down here, he yells in Chinese. James nervously places his hands up. The humming grows louder and then shakes the floors. The armed military man gets sucked back through the tunnel, and the pressure then takes James as well. They float and get quickly pulled through the array of tunnels and approach a slew of vibrant lights that resemble the Milky Way galaxy. The Chinese soldier screams and gets pulled, firing his gun back at the sun-like galaxy that he approaches. He drops his gun, and James takes it and then latches himself on a torch, holding on for dear life. He watches the Chinese soldier get pulled into the galaxy, and a massive flash of white light ensues, and he disappears along with his screams. The galaxy pulses and pulses, growing louder, and then becomes silent. Gravity kicks in, and James falls to the ground. He looks to the galaxy at the center and stares in awe. James looks to his right to see a large door that appears to be bubble wrap. He looks for a door through it, but sees nothing. He places his hand on it, and it falls through. It appears to be some sort of nanoparticle door. James looks to see an individual subway cart. He looks to it confused. It has all Chinese writing along the side of it. James presses a button and opens the door. He peers inside to see a very modern subway entrance. James enters, and the door is shut behind him. The cart begins to move. Buckle seatbelt, please. The robotic voice says in Mandarin, Cantonese, and then English. James looks on, perplexed, as he peers out the side of the tunnel. The cart zips, and he gets sucked back into his seat. He's going so fast that he can't even see outside of the windows. Light speed. He holds on for life, and the cart begins to slow down. James can now make out what's outside. He sees the mountains of Tibet and a large Chinese flag. What the fuck? James looks on in shock as he approaches a tunnel that goes beneath the mountains. James stops to see a laboratory with bright white lights. It's empty. He peeks his head out and looks around the area. James doesn't want to get locked out of the cart, so he just leans outside of it. He hears a noise. James quickly enters the cart and presses a button. The cart repeats its seatbelt instructions and then zips back off to the United States. Thomas and Claudia lay in bed together as the sun begins to rise and peek through the room's lace curtains. He pets her hair while she lies on his chest. Calm silence fills them both. For the first time in a long time, they've helped each other find peace in the mirroring lens of their imprisoned eyes. "I want you to come with me today," Thomas says. "To the event?" Claudia asks. "Yes. I can't leave. I told you what happens." "Maybe it won't happen. You said that no one has ever touched since you've been here." Thomas assures her, "You're not a ghost." "I don't know what I am, nor do I know why I'm here." Claudia rises, frustrated. Thomas sits at the edge of the bed and gently grabs her away from getting dressed, pulling her to him. "Maybe you're here to meet me. Maybe you're here to set us both free," Thomas says while gazing into Claudia's deep black eyes. "You know, I was fixated on why we're here, the human race, living and breathing in this mysterious air. But then I realized that question can be answered in many ways, and none of them are definitive. But I now know that it's completely irrelevant. The question we should ask ourselves is, why am I here? And if we don't know, then we should set up challenging goals to create meaning. And by simply living life, we then create our meaning, and even those that we never even meet." Thomas holds her hand. "It's time for you to stop asking why and start living, and it's time for me to do the same." Claudia gazes to Thomas in awe. She grabs his face and passionately kisses him. "I'm not ready yet," she softly says to Thomas. At the Peabody Museum, a massive event for horror fans is held. Everything horror you can imagine is here. Fans dressed as Freddy Krueger, Jason, Michael Myers, and more. It is truly eccentric, and despite its seeming darkness, it is a very festive, lighthearted, and welcoming place. The oddities and misconceptions of those that like horror and gore are often paradoxical to the sense that their compassion is greater than most, even with the cloak of embracing death. If one has not noticed, many take care and love animals even more dearly than humans because of their innate sense of conscious presence in the iris of their eyes. The famous horror icon, Countess Catherine, arrives in her dark vampire attire. Her pale cleavage reflects the flash of the hungry paparazzi. Catherine is one of the most influential horror icons and movie stars within the community, and has one of the largest dedicated fan bases in history. This is why people from all over the world have traveled to see her. Thomas arrives solo. He shows his wristband at the door and enters the festive museum. The Countess goes to the back to her dressing room to get ready for her performance to debut her new rock album that is also the soundtrack to her newest film, A Trail of Blood. While the Countess sits in her dressing room and gets ready, a puzzled look takes over her powdered white face. She feels a faint breath whisper over her shoulder, and she quickly turns, but nothing is there. "We're on in 10, Cassie," says a handler with a clipboard standing at the doorway. He then quickly exits. She begins to powder her famous cleavage. A door that is camouflaged into the wall eerily creaks open. She slowly turns to it and then rises to inspect it. It's so dark inside that nothing can be seen. Green eyes briefly light up and then disappear in the far distance. A cat jumps out at her. A black cat runs on by and out of her dressing room. "Well, that's good luck," she says while chuckling. Vibration is heard, and humming travels from the dark halls. She then takes her cell phone flashlight and walks on through the door and ventures down the hallway. Cobwebs are scattered throughout the tight catacomb like corridors. She parts the heavy white webs and continues to walk into the mysterious abyss. Water droplets fall from the ceiling and echo amongst the long halls. Chirping bugs, croaking frogs, and other creepy crawlies echo through the underground halls, making an eerie symposium of glum. Catherine turns around to see the faint light from which she walked from is now thousands of yards, if not miles away. Her perplexed face quickly becomes worried. The Countess turns to her right to see a steel door. She places her hand against the door and feels the etched finger marks and braille-like dried blood reading horror stories of the past. She opens the door and enters to an abandoned stage. A stage light abruptly shines on her. A black shadow sits in the audience as Catherine attempts to peer over the blinding light, trying to block it out with her hand. Outside of the Peabody-hosted event, the disheveled detective walks on by with a brown paper bag in his hand, drinking his sorrows away. His beard is unkempt and his shirt is stained with what looks like old mustard. The fact that he's even out walking around after the discovery of his daughter's body is perplexing, but then again, he has nowhere to go. As the detective attempts to walk on through the foot traffic, amidst the sea of festive masks, is a young girl staring back to him. He abruptly stops and drops his paper bag and bottle to the ground. It shatters and the bag becomes sopping wet with bourbon. The detective's eyes follow the back of the head of the mysterious girl. He then pursues her, pushing through the colorfully dark crowd. Thomas walks through the museum. A picture of the Salem witch trials catches his eye. All of the wrongfully accused witches begging for their lives atop of a little mound surrounded by fire. Weird, right? A ponytailed tourist chimes in while sipping her cherry-red slushie. It's the only painting of witches being burned in Salem. There's no documentation of any burnings, just hangings. She walks off while Thomas continues to stare to the vivid painting. In the background of the painting is a shoreline and a distant building. He hears a click and a creak. A hidden doorway beneath the picture opens up. People walk on by behind Thomas, but no one else notices it. Thomas stares to the hidden doorway, perplexed. A burnt hand with steams exuding from it reaches out of the dark, waving him to the door. He walks to it hypnotized, and then enters. The door shuts behind him and disappears into the wall. The picture above the door is not what it once was. It is now witches upon the gallows pole with a noose and an executioner. Walking through the cobweb corridors in a trance, Thomas follows this shadow-like figure that holds a candle lighting their way down the dark tunnel. He hears screaming and quickly snaps out of the trance. The mysterious shadow and its candle disappears, and all is dark other than the hue of lightning bugs and glowworms scattered throughout the tunnel, pulsing like a heartbeat, exuding their shimmering glow. He looks to an adjacent doorway and runs through it. Thomas sees the horror queen icon screaming as a shadowy figure stands over her with a bloody knife. Countess Catherine cries and yelps in pain. "Hey!" Thomas screams. The figure turns around and they wear that very same decrepit witch mask. The masked being raises the knife and takes one final large stab into the starlet. The shadowy figure steps back and Thomas locks eyes with the Catherine as the last ember of life quickly fades from her body. Thomas turns and looks for an exit in the dark corridors. He's abruptly transported to the halls. Thomas frantically looks around and then runs through the crowded halls and screams, "Help! Help! There's a murderer! They killed Countess Catherine!" Masked and dressed up fans look to him like he's crazy. Police guarding the venue doors quickly notice the uproar and rush to him. "Please, follow me!" Thomas shouts and waves to them. The police follow him with unsure eyes. Thomas attempts to find the doorway beneath the picture, but there is nothing. The police look to one and other like this guy is on something. Thomas frantically looks around and then up to the picture. This picture was different before. "Excuse me, is there a problem?" A concerned, bow-tied museum manager approaches the commotion. "There's a room behind this. I saw it. I went through the doors right here," Thomas frantically says. "Someone was killed. Countess Catherine." "Sir, there is no doorway here," the museum manager replies sternly. One of the officers chime in while sighing. "Is there anything behind this wall?" "Why, yes, indeed," says the manager. "I can take you officers." "That would be helpful," one of the officers sarcastically reply. The manager leads the way and they all follow to a stairwell. In the stairwell is an old stage door. They enter into the tunnels. One of the cops shines his flashlight along the walls. "What is this place?" "A long time ago, there was a theater that this museum was built upon. Productions were held here as early as the 1600s, the museum manager says. Thomas looks to a door blended into the wall to his left. "Here." The group follows and enters to see the stage light shining upon the dead woman center stage. They all stare in shock. Police rush to her body. "My God." The museum manager looks on in shock. The detective continues to follow the back of the head of his ghostly daughter, walking through the crowd, but she quickly disappears. He pushes through the horror fans as his eyes frantically search for her, but she's gone. He stands dazed and confused in the middle of the hallway. The younger of the cops abruptly exits from the stairwell and throws up into a garbage can. He wipes his mouth and then looks up surprised to see the detective. Detective, what are you doing here? The detective ignores him, and with his bulging eyes, continues searching for his daughter amidst the crowd. Are you okay? You should be resting. The detective mumbles to himself in a daze. She was here. There was another murder, the young cop says, while wiping his mouth with his forearm. Claudia vacuums the carpeted halls of the hotel. She walks past a mirror and then catches a glance of herself in it. She again stops and looks to herself, studying her reflection. The ground begins to shake, as does the chandeliers of the hotel. A crack splits the hotel ground in half, and Claudia falls into the hall, attempting to climb up the trail of carpet, but she plummets into the split ground. Claudia lays on the ground and coughs, attempting to get the wind back inside of her lungs. She looks around to see all of Coffin's undisturbed, and then hears murmuring voices. She looks up to see flashlights. Deep underground, discreet Chinese military appear, dressed in black clothing. Claudia quickly hides behind a slab of broken concrete. The soldiers aim their guns around to the coffins. Shock fills their face. Mao, the head leader of the soldiers, stares in awe. Open one, he says to a foot soldier. Fear fills the eyes of his minion as slowly walks over to a coffin to open it. He slowly opens the heavy wood door to see a sleeping woman. She's incredibly white and beautiful. She lies peacefully, with her hands resting upon her chest. The minion turns back around to Mao. He stares back in suspicion. The woman's eyes open and she looks to the soldier in fright. He abruptly fires one into her chest. She screams and heaves and then silently drops to the ground. Her leg twitches. They fire more bullets into her. You idiot, Mao yells. The rest of the coffins all open up and the soldiers open fire upon them. Claudia holds her eyes shut tight and covers her ears. Once sleeping vampires cry and choke as the soldiers exterminate every last one of them. Mao then walks over the bodies to a hue of light. An underground circulating pool of water quietly sits. There is gold and ancient artifacts all around it. A gold goblet with rubies sits at the edge of it. Mao touches the artifacts with complete awe. He looks to a hieroglyphic story showing someone drinking from the pool of life and dying, and their soul then being freed. His fingers run alongside it and feel its essence. Sir, they're dead, a soldier says. They are vampires. They were dead to begin with, he replies while holding the goblet. Make sure they're truly dead. Mao then has a realization. Come here. The soldier walks over to him and he hands him the goblet. Drink from there. The soldier looks to him hesitantly. Drink. Mao aims his gun to him. The soldier slowly fills the goblet up in the bubbling water and raises it to his mouth. He nervously looks up to Mao and then takes a sip. The soldier's eyes light up. He quickly goes back for more of the bubbling water, chugging it down. Mao watches confused. The soldier then turns and looks to Mao. The soldier feels every little ounce of energy. He feels the pulsing and vibrations of even the faintest pulse. He smells Mao's scent. Fangs release from the soldier's top teeth, and he growls, charging at Mao. Bang! One of his other men fires several bullets into him, sending him back with each bullet as his face continues to change into a vampiric bat and his claws continue to grow. The soldiers continue to light him up with bullets, causing him to fall backwards into the bubbling water, then dissolving into a pool of blood and then dissipating into mist in the air. Mao stares in shock. We must call our leader, he says to one of his soldiers. The men then walk off to the other part of the tunnel in which they had come. It seems a demolition job went wrong. Claudia peeks from over the rubble and looks to the men leaving. She slowly rises and walks over the rubble. Claudia looks to the open coffins and scattered vampire bodies. Tears fill her eyes as she recognizes all of the dead vampires staying at her place. Claudia's eyes are caught by the shimmer of the water. She walks towards it. All of these vampires came to drink this water in order to become human and gain mortality. It only takes one cup. Anything more, it will dissolve you into thin air. And now, after learning what happens when a mortal drinks it, apparently it has the opposite effect and turns them into a hungry vampire. Claudia has now for the first time seen the reason as to why they come to the bed and breakfast, where she has been imprisoned too. Claudia looks to the goblet and the water, pondering about the idea of death, life, or whatever it entails. Metal falls to the ground and breathing fills her ears. The vampires begin heal and the bullets fall to the ground. Claudia turns to look to the vampires as they begin to heal and come back to life. Governor Brandon sits at his desk as his phone rings. He picks it up. What the fuck do you mean? He quickly calms himself down. James looks to him from outside of the door. The governor presses a button and it automatically shuts the door. James looks to the news on the television and sees that a sinkhole in Marblehead appears to have sucked the old bed and breakfast into the ground. The newscaster walks around the police at the crime scene. Governor Brandon quickly walks out of his office and past James. You have a meeting with the Dean of Cambridge, James reminds him. Cancel it. The governor walks off. The governor drives in his vehicle and speaks on the phone. We cannot let anyone down there. Tell the police to back off. It is a federal investigation. They don't need any explanation. Agents are on the way to control the scene. The governor exits to the large building. He enters to see the construction crew working. Mao and his men appear and look to Brandon. He follows them, entering a door that goes underneath the ground to where they were excavating. Do your men not know how to control their explosives? The governor angrily says. Do you know the shit that I'm going to have to cover up? You have no idea what we've come across, Mao replies in broken English. They approach the site of the vampire massacre, stepping on the scattered bullets. Mao's eyes grow large to see that there are no bodies. There are no longer any coffins. Is this a joke? Governor Brandon says. Mao looks around the area, and then the two walk to the pool of water. The governor watches him. Mao takes one of his men and throws him into the pool. He quickly begins to steam and turn into a beast, flailing and then quickly disintegrating. The governor looks on, intrigued. There is a lot of weird shit happening here. A smile fills his face. One of the Chinese scientists appear with a tablet in hand, showing him body cam footage of the soldier that encountered James in the tunnel. The governor's eyes grow large and his nostrils flail. Thomas sits at the police station in a cold interrogation room. He's questioned by the detective's young partner. How did you find her? There was a doorway and I saw it open. Someone was there and waved me to come to it. He continues perplexed. Their hand was burnt and steaming. It looked fake, like something out of the movies. Did you see their face? No, they had a long black cloak. I just saw that hand. But I am telling you, there was a doorway underneath that picture. The rookie looks to him with his eyebrows raised. Behind the glass is the detective gazing to Thomas as he tells the rookie what he had seen. A female officer enters with a coffee and looks surprised to see the unruly detective. Detective, you should be resting. He ignores her and continues to watch Thomas being questioned by his partner. So, you saw a ghost? The rookie sarcastically asks. Thomas takes a moment and thinks, yeah, I guess I did. The detective's face lights up. Finally, someone who is seeing things akin to him. Moments later, Thomas exits the police station to the surgical mask-littered streets. Two police officers chat while sipping coffee out front. Detective O shouldn't be here. He's mentally unstable, the hefty officer says. Imagine seeing your kid like that. I don't know. What's he gonna do? The other frail officer replies. I say get back in it and get your mind off it. Sounds like you're giving your wisdom about your several failed relationships, the hefty officer says with a grin. She playfully smacks him in the chest. Fuck you. You know, all of these years on the force, I've never seen a homicide. Really? But you were in Boston, way back when. Just desk duty, dispatcher shit. Thomas stands near them and looks to his phone. The officer's eyes turn to him. Hey kid, what's it like witnessing a murder? Asked the hefty male cop while wiping milky froth from his mustache. The female officer nudges him. What? I never saw one before. Thomas ignores them and walks off. Kid, Thomas turns around to see the detective. You left your wallet. The detective walks over and hands Thomas his wallet. Thank you. He reads his badge. I'm sorry for your loss. How'd you know? The detective asks. Thomas nods behind him, and they both look to the officer standing and gossiping in the distance. They awkwardly wave to the detective. The detective turns back around to Thomas, and appearing behind him is his daughter. She glimmers and shines like an angel. He is the key, her voice melodically says. You can still find me. What do you mean? The detective utters. You're dead. Thomas looks to the detective confused. Are you all right? His ghostly daughter vanishes, and he quickly snaps out of his daze. What you saw. There's been odd things happening. The murders. He deeply struggles to find his words and his sanity. I've been seeing things, and I don't know if it's the grief or shock or even if it's real, but I'm trying to wrap my head around it. More importantly, I'm trying to find who did this to my daughter. Thomas takes a moment and takes in what the conflicted detective is saying. A few years ago, I lost my brother in a car accident. I watched the light fade out of his eyes. I wished for him to return, or to just give me a sign, to appear to me as a fucking ghost, I don't know, he half-heartedly says. But he never did. I'm just stuck with these nightmares that I can't escape. I believed in nothing, no faith in a god, in an afterlife, or any sort of mysticism. Though there's a piece of me that may disagree with that. But now, after what I've been experiencing, I'm either crazy or, for some reason, a new door has opened up. Tears fill the eyes of the detective. Please, tell me everything that you know. Chapter 10. Wandering the streets, Claudia nervously looks around. She walks by tourists and stares to everyone, taking in the sights, ice cream shops, pizzerias, magic shops, all of the Salem sights. She takes it all in and then takes a deep breath, closing her eyes, inhaling deep. She opens her eyes to see that she's in the same exact place. A smile fills her, along with tears. Claudia then sees Thomas across the way with the detective. She quickly begins to walk to him, crossing the street. Thomas then notices her, and a smile comes across his face. "Excuse me," Thomas says to the detective. Thomas nears Claudia, and the two strongly embrace one and other. "Something happened. The hotel is gone," Claudia nervously says. "What?" Thomas replies, confused. "There was like an earthquake, and it fell into the ground. These men blew it up. These Asian men with guns. They tried to kill all of the vampires that were underground." "Vampires underground?" the detective chimes in. Claudia continues to frantically speak to Thomas. "Something crazy is happening. I don't know what, but there's something even bigger than the vampires." "What the fuck could be bigger than learning about vampires existing?" Thomas continues. "We got a call to investigate the collapsing of the hotel, but they called local PD off and marked it as a federal crime." Detective O deeply thinks. He then looks across the street to the magic shop and sees his daughter standing and waving for him to come to her. A truck zips on by and blocks his vision. She then disappears. Back at Misery Island, Kat wanders the sunny, purple-sanded shores. Her stomach rumbles as hunger sets in. She looks to all of the vibrant plum trees, but now she's unsure to again eat them after her trip. She obviously doesn't know whether they're hallucinogenic or not. She looks to the old foundation and runs her hands alongside the rough, oxidized limestone edges. She climbs and hobbles through the deep brush and vines of the long, purple plum trees. Kat hears crunching in the woods. She quickly runs to hide behind a large and hollowed-out tree stump. Appearing through the thick brush is the large, beastly man that she encountered in the underground cave. He stumbles and wanders around the area. His bare feet are dirty and calloused. He pauses at the edge of the water and sniffs. This large man's face is covered in a beard. His body holds thick hair and scars. His nostrils continue to flare as he smells something. Kat nervously swallows her fright. She hears the man nearing her. His breathing becomes heavier as his bare feet crack on the twigs of the forest. The breeze picks up and the trees make a heavy rustling. Kat leans into the decaying stump. Bugs begin to flood out of the stump. Fire ants and spiders. She stays composed, but then they begin to bite. Their sharp fangs pierce her dry and sunburnt skin. Kat cannot take any more, and she jumps up in fright and frantically flails off the biting insects. Kat quickly looks around for the beastly man. He's nowhere to be found. She begins to back up and comes to a halt. She slowly turns around to see the beast leering over her. They stare into one another's eyes. Governor Brandon arrives in his limousine to a podium set up in the center of Salem. All of the townsfolk flood the streets along with the eager tourists. Some people cheer for him and others boo at him and hold signs reading "Tyrant, Dictator, Hitler, Pig, Technocrat." Many of the locals lost their jobs and businesses because of the strict virus guidelines and because of the mandatory vaccine mandates put forth by the governor. Some were on board until the outbreak of illnesses in young boys, along with the miscarriages in young women, all due to the pushing of the harmless vaccine. There was a slew of health problems in all of the school systems, and they had blamed it on the mutated virus until a brave doctor and a journalist came forth to tell the truth. Both of these men lost their jobs and livelihood after they were banned and repeatedly censored off of social media platforms. The doctor lost his medical license, and the journalist was barred from every media company in the Boston area, though they together organized in-person gatherings by word of mouth and developed a large following. Dr. Truth and Eddie Light stand amongst the crowd and peacefully attempt to resist the new pharmaceutical company coming to Massachusetts. The majority of the people show that more and more people were beginning to see the truth after all of the exploited lies, but there were still the zombified puppets that lacked any sense of individualized thought and logic. Eli takes the stage next to his brother as the governor begins to speak. As many of you are aware, I was born and raised in this historic town, Salem, and I love everything about it. My brother is the mayor here. My family is still here. In fact, our original home is now a landmark that houses, educates, and feeds the homeless. As many of you know, there have been several unsolved murders approaching this Halloween season, and the state of Massachusetts, as well as the elected city officials of Salem, feel that it is within our duty to protect its people and its tourists, and that is exactly what we shall do. We shall do this by canceling Halloween this year. The crowd angrily screams, enraged, looking to one and other with "what the fuck" eyes. This will be a big dent in our economy, being that Salem alone generates more than $100 million a year from our rich history. But my brother and I feel that the young lives lost are worth far more than tradition and tourism. We will be implementing mandatory lockdowns and curfews similar to the virus lockdowns. All citizens are to remain indoors once the sun goes down at 5 p.m. As public servants, it is our duty to protect you, and our police force will most definitely continue to do so. You mean the police force that you fired because they didn't bend to your tyrannical will? Dr. Truth yells. He has a particular passion for Massachusetts because this is where his practice was. The governor is responsible for getting his license revoked due to the lobbying brought on by the pharmaceutical companies that he was partnering with. Other groups in the audience agree and hold signs reading, "Our right to choose. The jab is deadly. Science is truth." Governor Brandon looks to the townsfolk bothered and nods his head with a grin, reclenching his fist. Yes, we've learned that even the highest elected officials in our government have made mistakes in the past, and some parts of science have been skewed due to money. But this doesn't mean we're not looking out for your best interest. In fact, our police force will most definitely be coming back and not losing any of their benefits or pension, as I lift the mandate on mandatory vaccinations throughout the state of Massachusetts today. Another person yells, "Because re-election is coming." Eddie Light holds a camera on a gimbal and records the whole thing, panning back and forth from the crowd to the politicians. You signed a deal for one of the largest pharmaceutical corporations to come to Massachusetts. Then there will soon be even more lobbying both locally and nationally, a woman loudly states. Governor Brandon smiles. "We have created over 100,000 new jobs and tax revenue to the state of Massachusetts, ranging well over $1 billion. You are welcome. Lockdowns begin today. Thank you for your time and patience," the governor firmly says. Mixed cheers and screams are heard amongst the crowd. Fights between the freethinkers and the followers begin to break out. Many of the people that lost their businesses are just simply fed up. Police try to break up the fights, but there are way too many people pushing and shoving in the street. The chaos can't be controlled. The governor and his brother disappear into the limousine and attempt to drive through the angry crowd. A green slushie is thrown upon their windshield as angry screams are heard. Thomas and Claudia hear the commotion in the distance. Police begin to turn on their sirens and speak into their megaphones. "Disperse, or we will be ordered to use force." Thomas looks around for the O. He sees that he's across the street nearing the magic shop. "Come on," Thomas says to Claudia. He grabs her hand and they cross the street as the chaos of the roaring crowd makes their way to them, following the official's car. People continue to run after the limousine as it slowly drives through the angry people. Thomas looks around to all of the chaos while moving with Claudia through the craziness. Inside of the limo, James looks out to all of the angry people. The governor's eyes stare to him and James feels his gaze. He presses a button, raising the divider between them and the driver. "Dinner tonight," the governor sternly says. "I can't. I have to get home," James replies. Silence fills the car. The governor stares through him. James feels something is off. The car finally moves through the busy tourist streets and moves to the highway. Eli sits in the pews at the church. He looks to the statue of Jesus mounted up above with admiration. Blake walks down the pews and then sits near him. "This world will become more chaotic as all becomes more absolute," Eli says. Blake remains silent and tentatively listens. "My brother has told me petrifying news. We must continue preaching the word of the Lord, or else this world will surely be doomed." Eli rises and begins to walk off. Blake looks to him and then looks to Jesus. He does the sign of the cross and then follows Eli. Claudia and Thomas enter the magic store. It is pitch black. There is not a soul around. Thomas looks around the shop for the detective or any bodies. "Where do you think he went?" Claudia asks while looking around the desolate shop. They hear a scream coming from the back room. Thomas and Claudia run to the back of the building. A doorway leading to concrete steps lead to a flame-lit corridor. They hear chanting echoing in the distance. Thomas cautiously walks down the creepy stairwell with Claudia not far behind. As the concrete staircase mysteriously winds around the bend to more darkness lit by the faint light of flames, Claudia and Thomas trek to the chants as they grow louder. They finally reach the bottom and look down to a hallway that seems endless. "Hey!" Detective stands behind him. Thomas and Claudia jump in fright. "Fuck!" Thomas yells. Claudia holds her hand upon her heart. "Relax, it's just me," the detective says. "Why'd you come here? What is this place?" Thomas nervously looks around. "I saw my daughter again." He shakes his head in befuddlement, "and I couldn't take my eyes off of her. She waved for me to come here." Claudia looks ahead and points. "Is that her?" The group looks to see O's daughter in the distance, glowing as a silhouette, waving them to come and follow. The chanting stops, and a man's screams perk up their ears. They quickly run to follow. As the ghostly silhouette of the detective's daughter fades into the air, they see a brightly lit door to their left. They enter into a room and see the Black Wizard, one of the owners of the magic shop, in a trance. His neck is bent back and his jaws hanging loose. The wizard's gray eyes stare to the sky as he slowly floats in the air. Standing around him are hooded beings. Thomas, Claudia, and O all stare in shock of what they are seeing. Outside on the streets of Salem, in the town center of town, is the preacher. He looks to the end of all of the chaos as police take control. Curfew is approaching. If anyone is caught out on the street, you will be summoned a $500 fine. An officer yells into his megaphone. The preacher continues to walk on by. He stops and feels the faint whisper of something or someone, though it's as gentle as the wind. He stands right in front of the magic shop, and his eyes are drawn to it. He looks to all of the mystic decorations and for a moment is entranced. His dogmatic fate quickly kicks in and pulls him away, continuing to walk off. Thomas and his friends continue to stare in awe of what they're seeing. Throughout the halls, ghostly figures begin to appear humming and chanting songs of mixed languages, Native Americans, the accused Salem witches, and a glowing doorway built upon flames. The whole room turns upside down and gravity quickly dissipates. All begin to float. All of the lit candles in the room quickly go out as their wax drops to the floor upon being turned upside down. The detective drops his gun and it accidentally fires upon hitting the floor. The room then quickly turns back to normal and gravity kicks in, everyone falling to the ground. The masked people turn to see Thomas, Claudia, and O. The detective quickly crawls over to his gun to grab it. A tiger-masked person places their foot upon the gun. The floating black wizard drops onto the table as all of the candles blow out. She removes her mask and her face holds great beauty. Her eyes are steel blue, her skin olive with olive complexion, and her hair in dreads. She looks middle-aged, 40 or so, but has the face of a porcelain doll. "We wish you no harm." She speaks. "I am Tituba." She lifts her foot of the gun. The detective quickly grabs it and rises. "What the fuck was that?" Thomas holds Claudia as the rest of the group remove their masks. 6 of them, half and half, young men and women, look to the action. The Black Wizard is helped up by one of the young men. They're all college-age students. Tituba looks to Claudia with big eyes. The soothsayer from the alternate. Claudia looks to her confused. "You are the seer of the other world, but you've become trapped and lost your way." "I don't know what I am," Claudia replies confused. Tituba slowly walks over to her and raises her hand to her cheek. "I know exactly who you are," she says with smile. "You are both here and there." "Where is there?" Thomas chimes in. "The other world. We know nothing about. But what we do know is that it looks like this one, and there may several others." The wizard grabs his cane and begins to hobble over to the detective. The detective instinctively lowers his gun. "You are the chosen ones." The wizard slowly points his decrepit hands. "You are the ones to save us once and for all." "Save you from what?" the detective asks. The wizard replies, "Your daughter has been a great help." "My daughter is dead," he replies. "She is not." She is what lead you to us. The wizard replies, every person in this room was called upon by magic. After what my daughter saw, we knew that we would need help. What did you see? Claudia asks. Tituba replies, what you showed me. Tituba pours a solution into a cauldron, and a hologram takes forth. During the pandemic, something happened underground. A doorway to a different realm was discovered upon the breaking of ground for the new pharmatech building being built. The governor and his descendants have a bloodline that goes back to when the Puritan landed, and their hunger for power has only grown since then. Upon his discovery upon the gateway to another realm, the United States government soon came into the picture. Once the Chinese military discovered the tunnels directly to the United States, they then too became affiliated, being that their classified technology was far more advanced compared to this country. As the United States depended upon the release of the Chinese virus in order to experiment with gene therapy from another realm, along with the massive transfer of wealth that followed because of it, more and more oddities were discovered. The vampires, Thomas says. Many odd things have been coming to light, Tituba says. You were called here by your brother. She looks to Thomas. You were called here by your daughter. Tituba turns to the detective. You sent yourself here from the other realm in order to help us see the past and, too, the future. She looks Claudia. You just got stuck outside the doorway to your realm. You were once translucent, but now you're completely here in mind, body, and spirit. Tituba strokes her hair. You are solid despite being the light of spaciousness. Why us? Thomas asks. You were the ones that chose to listen. The wizard chimes in. Presence chose you because you chose to be one with it. I remember. Claudia's eyes fill up with tears. I remember now. The detective chimes in. You said that my daughter is still alive. He says to the wizard, show me. The wizard's young followers hold him and assist him, but he waves them off. Making his way to the detective, he raises his hand and places it upon the detective's head. Instantly, the detective leaves his body and floats as a spirit. He looks down to the room as his solid form is in a trance. Upon blinking, he appears on Misery Island. He sees Cat bringing over long shrubs to a small hut, and outside of it, his daughter stands, directing her on where to put the branches down. The detective snaps out of the state and comes back to real time. Tears flood his eyes. The wizard falls to the ground weakened after using his powers. He gets helped up from his knees by a young girl. Tituba speaks. Misery Island houses one of the portals to the other realm, but the veins run underneath Salem, and further than we yet know. There's other tunnels? Thomas asks. There are different places that apparently bring you different moments in time, the future and the past. Tituba continues to speak. There is also a realm that brings fiction into reality. It seems that all that was of the once formless turned into form in some sort of very real fairy tale realm. That's why I was with the vampires, Claudia says, with a slight question. Yes, Tituba replies, but that is of this world, despite some of them coming from the other realm. So they come here from another realm and start a life here. The detective questions. Why? Corruption and the wish to a better life. Tituba says, it's no different than anyone leaving their country to come here, for the same reasons too, political corruption basically being root of it all throughout the realms. So, what do we do? Thomas asks. The murders and disappearances of the young girls isn't just some serial slaying or religious extremist attack. They are sacrificing their bodies to the other world, and people over there are making promises for the lives of their duplicates. Tituba continues to speak. There are wealthy and powerful people that are trying to combine one of the many worlds with this one. The Misery Island portal seeks the souls of young girls to power it. Witchcraft was the first scapegoat, and it was an innocent mistake of psychological fear. But upon stumbling what the Native Americans attempted to keep closed, the conquering Puritans didn't know how to close it, so they sacrificed lives to keep the door close, or so they thought. Each life they put to death made the hole bigger. How do we stop them? Claudia asks. Tituba says, we must get them to see what they truly are. And what if they don't? Thomas asks. Then we must use force. Tituba replies. Chapter 11. The preacher walks the streets as all begin to enter their homes for the curfew. A poster catches his eye of a missing girl. He looks to it and studies it momentarily. A police car slowly drives by with its lights, scooping out the area. Anthony then walks into the doorway of his small apartment sitting above the bodega. He enters, throwing his bag down, and then goes on his computer. The preacher begins searching news articles entailing the murders and disappearances of the girls. He then notices a pattern. All of the girls missing appear to be orphans, orphans of the Salem orphanage, the very orphanage affiliated with his congregation, the very orphanage that Sister Marie is the head of. Suspicion fills his eyes as he raises his brows in befuddlement. James stands at the doorway and says goodbye to his wife and kid. They're going to spend the night at her house for her birthday. Have fun at Grandma's house. I'll see you guys first thing in the morning, James says. You know she always loves when we spend the night, his wife replies. James kisses his wife. She strokes his face with love in her eyes, then followed by a tear. He wipes it away. What's wrong? Nothing, she replies, and then looks to her son. Give Daddy another hug and kiss goodnight. His son jumps into his arms. Love you, buddy, James says. Love you too, Daddy, his son endearingly says. His wife and son walk to their car and drive off. James stands at the doorway and watches. He then turns around to go back inside. James walks over to his computer and begins searching the internet and opens up Eddie Light's website. He looks for his contact information and begins to write an email. Mr. Wright, I have groundbreaking information regarding the corruption of the state government locally as well as nationally. Please contact me at... The power in James's house goes out. James looks around nervously. The doorbell rings. James rises and begins to walk over to the door. He opens it and no one is there. He sees a limousine parked not too far away. A noise is heard behind him. He turns to see the governor seated on the couch. The faint light from the window casts a menacing shadow upon his face. Power outage, huh? The governor asks while James slowly walks to the dark living room. I'd imagine you know why I am here. Family doesn't betray family, so I am here as your brother-in-law, but I'm also here as your employer. As your brother-in-law, I'm going to tell you the truth. As your employer, I'm going to warn you that if you weren't my brother-in-law, you'd already be dead. Governor Brandon rises. I know what you saw, and I know this is rather surreal and incredibly perplexing. There are cameras down there, you know. What are you doing to do to me? James nervously replies. The governor snickers. That all depends on your choices. Let's clear a few things in this story up. There was and has been tunnels under Massachusetts since before colonization of the Puritans, and probably long before them. I'd imagine, if I was hypothesizing, and due to the intellect of some geologists, when Pangaea came apart 160 million years ago or so, these tunnels were formed through the shifting of tectonic plates, sinkhole collapse, and whatever it may be. Long story short, upon recent discovery, upon the construction of the new Pharmatech building, we learned that China is just around the corner, and they had set up intelligence below us, underground, and this was okayed by the highest military institutions, globalists, and technocratic elites. Being that China released the virus in affiliation with the United States, it was only logical to join forces and subsidize the $1.1 trillion of American debt to the Chinese government. It was as lucrative move, and what we have here is far more valuable than money itself. In fact, though the media will tell you that the debt owed to China is very real, it's not. It's a show. China would have wiped us out a long time ago if our military wasn't so strong and our international presence wasn't so equipped to defend the U.S. Being that Massachusetts has one of the known portals to another realm, China, being the imperialists that they are working with their fellow imperialists to study the other realm and eventually colonize it. James takes in this crazy information. This is all absurd and makes no sense. Oh no, it makes perfect sense, the governor replies. And now there's been a discovery of more realms, galaxies, whatever you want to call it, and fucking vampires. That makes no sense. The governor nears James. Now, being that we're one of the wealthiest families in the United States, we're able to have power that not many people can have. And you are family, despite living like a pauper. What is in the vaccines? James promptly asks. It's a strain of RNA that we cultivated underground, he replies. So the whole world is guinea pigs, James says, sickened. We tested on some animals. Many of their deaths were slow. Some were fast. We figured those that survive will need lifelong medication, which is profit for us. And those that die cleanse the world of its overpopulation and endless fornication. And two, the insurance companies will pay out. Really, it's a win-win scenario. How do you sleep at night? James replies. Like a king, on a kind bed too, the governor sarcastically says. We are the true gods in this realm, and though our lives are temporary, we must do what we need to do for ourselves and then for our children. But we will soon find a cure for death too. Governor Brandon sternly looks to James. So, now you have choice. You are family. As your brother-in-law, I suggest you live quietly and love my sister and my nephew to the moon and back endlessly. As your employer and as your brother-in-law, if I find out that you're thinking of exploiting this information, not only will no one believe you, but I will have you locked up in the loony bin quicker than an abrupt sneeze. So tell me, James, are you going to live or are you going to die? James's eyes are filled with rage. Silence stricken him as his jaw clenches. Ah, do you hear that? The governor asks. The sound of silence. He begins to walk out. There's a bonus for you under the fireplace. Christmas came early, thank the Lord. The governor stands at the doorway. Now, if you'll excuse me, I have somewhere to be. He exits the home. James looks on sickened. The power flickers, and then all comes back on. James looks to the massive duffel bag that is obviously filled with money. He ponders deeply as to what he should do. Chapter 12. In this reality, we're only limited to see what our mind tells us, but there are multiple realities that are too real to even be real. Tituba continues to speak. Some of us are able to access them and feel them within the power of the present moment, but others are too diluted in their conditioned mind stream. In most cases, it takes tragedy to believe in the unbelievable, though many go insane by the mysteriousness that they see and feel because they identify so heavily with their thinking mind that it can't comprehend the spiritual and alternate dimensional universe, the multiverse, the different realms, the interdimensional ways of being, whatever you desire to call it. They become lost in their story. Many spiritual teachers have spoken of these realms with labels. The most prominent used are the labels heaven or hell, but the thinking mind warped the perception of these articulated metaphysical lands to something simple and controllable that the conditioned mind could grasp. The great spiritual teachers were aware that the only way to truly teach the awareness of these realms was to live by example, spreading kindness, love, peace, and harmony, while accepting the shared darkness that lives within us and in doing so innately embracing the light. But their teaching soon became misconstrued. Tituba continues to speak. This tunnel goes directly to Misery Island. Thomas, Claudia, and the detective all look to the doorway that goes underwater. It's like a walk-through aquarium with great beauty. A magical wand sits at the entry of the doorway and gently shimmers. It appears that this is holding the water from crashing down. What are we going to do? Thomas asks. Tituba replies, ambush them. This is the island where it all began. The portals, the persecution, the torture. Now remember, it's a place where man can become either a vessel of light or a shadowy, hungry beast. An unorganized religion that is older than God lives here. They are going to sacrifice 2 girls, and this will be the 13th sacrifice to open the doorway to the next realm. Then, those that desire to conquer the next realm will be able to do so. Why did they kill Countess Cassandra? Thomas asks. She was one of us, and she had the media power to exploit them. Tituba continues. She was going to help show the people what the corrupt government was doing and planning. That's why she was holding that event. It wasn't for her film, it was to tell the truth to the people. Claudia asks, why don't I know how to use my powers? Your powers will come when you truly accept where you are. Tituba says, then you will know. What if I arrest these people? Detective asks. It's a start, but it won't be enough. They have enough money to pay off the whole judicial system. The only way to stop them is to get them to see. I'm sorry, but you keep saying that. But how the fuck are we going to do it? Thomas asks. You will know when the time is right, Tituba says. Do guns work on this people? Detective O asks. Violence is never the answer, Tituba says. But yes, if need be, with the utmost resistance, bullets will end their lives, but it's not just them. This goes worldwide. Thomas chimes in. So, if we stop these people, we save the world. We throw a wrench into their plan, but there is more work to be done, Tituba says. Her eyes grow wide and she stares off in space as she has a vision. You must go. Darkness has fallen in their beginning. Thomas, Claudia, and the detective all look to one another with nervous eyes. They begin through the swooshing tunnel of water. Tituba stops Claudia. You will know when the time is right. Claudia looks to her and stoically nods, proceeding on through behind Thomas and the detective. Thomas turns to Tituba in midst of the tunnel. Can't you come with us? I must hold this open, she says, referring to the tunnel. We will be with you in spirit, the wizard chimes in. On the abandoned streets of Salem, a television plays in the window of an electronics store. A newscaster speaks. Halloween has again been canceled for the fourth year in a row. First it was due to a virus, and now it is because of a string of disappearances and murders. Though it is a compassionate move, economically it wasn't the best, and its townsfolk weren't too happy about it, taking to the streets before the curfew had set in. The city of Salem will lose a near hundreds of millions of dollars, and the governor had this to say. On television, the governor speaks. I have spoken to our president, and he has agreed to give money to the citizens of Massachusetts and money to the people of Salem. The support and financial care during economic hardship is what this country was built upon. Failure and opportunity, risk and reward. This is what our founding fathers would have done and would have wanted for us now. Some businesses will see as much as $10,000, depending on their annual gross and profit-generating factor. There will be no loss to the great state of Massachusetts. There will only be safety and security for our people and its economy. Tabitha and Emily walk their university streets dressed up in a costume. Tabitha as Chucky the doll and Emily as Kathy Bates's misery character. Don't you think that it's odd of them to allow college students out after curfew? Emily asks. Well, we're only allowed out on campus, Tabitha replies. How else would we get around and eat and go to class and shit? They approach a small walkway and decide to walk on through. Emily feels the presence of something. She nervously turns around. Someone stands in the darkness at the end of the walkway. She then turns back around to see Tabitha is gone. Tabitha, Emily yells as she nervously looks around. The being at the end of the walkway is no longer standing there. Emily turns around and begins to run off, but there are cloaked beings blocking each way. They stand on the quiet streets. A streetlight wobbles back and forth from the light gust of the wind, eerily creaking. Emily does not know which way to go because there is no way to go. There is no way out. Preacher wakes up from his couch in a fright. He calms his breath and then walks over to a window. He looks to the moon and then is compelled to leave. The preacher grabs his jacket and makes his way out the door. He walks to the streets but doesn't know where to go. An orb of light appears in the middle of the street and he begins to follow it, but jumps back and hides behind trash cans as a police officer drives on by. He waits for a moment and then rises. He looks for the orb of light and continues to follow it. Beneath the store of the wizard shop, the wayward group wanders through the oceanic tunnel. If this thing comes down on us, we're dead, Thomas says while observing the tunnel, placing his hand in the water. And frozen. He shakes the cold water off of his hand. They all hear a noise and come to a halt. A deep humming is heard. Detective grabs hold of his gun tightly. Silence momentarily fills their ears. And then, to their amazement, a whale swims overhead. They look to it in awe. Babies soon follow. They hum as they swim on by. The group looks to it in awe. They know you're coming. Tituba appears as a ghostly apparition, and through her runs a minotaur. Thick black stitching runs down to his collarbones from the bullhead stitched onto him. Bang! The detective fires several shots and hits the beast several times, but the creature does not stop, and it pounces upon Thomas. It thrashes him on the ground. Claudia reaches out to pull it off of him, but in doing so, she becomes one with the beast. She dissolves into the monster. The beast stops. Thomas locks eyes with it. Calmness fills the human eyes of the beast. It rises and slowly begins to walk off. Claudia then appears behind Thomas and the detective. They feel her presence and they look back to her in awe. I guess I found it, Claudia says. Thomas runs over to her and hugs her tight. What the fuck was that thing? The detective asks while checking his clip. The two lovebirds look into one another's eyes. One bullet left, the detective says. Claudia and Thomas look to him with slight nerves. Why didn't you get another clip or more bullets? The detective replies, we didn't really have time, and I figured we have magic on our side. Who needs bullets? The preacher continues to walk the cobblestone streets and follows the orb of light. He walks between alleyways and makes his way to the moonlit waters. He sees a small rowboat docked upon the shores. The orb of light ventures to it and makes his way into the boat. James sits on his couch and stares to his phone laying on the coffee table as it replays the whole conversation that him and his brother-in-law, the governor, had said. James thinks deeply as to whether he should shine the light of truth upon this matter or remain silent, though he knows swallowing his silence is the slowest taste of poison. The cemetery by the sea begins to shake. Skeletal hands rise from the ground and begin to reconstruct human life around them. Circulating blood, veins, tendons, ligaments, muscle, skin, and then pigmentation of all of the bones rising from the graves. It's happening, Tituba says while gazing off in a trance. The world of the dead is now converging with this one. If another gateway opens, it won't matter if we stop it, the wizard chimes in. Their young followers watch on with nervous eyes. The living dead creatures begin to walk the streets. A police car pulls up and looks to them, shining their light and voicing into the speakers. Halloween is canceled. Go home, or you will be written a summons. His door is ripped open by a malicious man, and he's dragged out into the street. A group of the masked witches stand in the middle of the secluded island beach surrounding Emily and Tabitha, who are tied to a stake and gagged. They look to one another with tears in their eyes, fearing their impending death. One of the masked beings drop a torch, and the ground ignites, making a circle of fire. Thomas, Claudia, and the detective exit from the brush and peer to the unnerving sacrificial area. A blood moon sits over the cloaked cult, and the hue from the flames create a hazy wave of heat blurring out the stars in the sky. Thomas looks back to his friends with raised eyebrows, clueless as to what to do. They're there, Tituba says, as she uses Claudia's sensory perception for her own personal camera. The wizard then nods. He sits down and closes his eyes and begins to utter chants of another language. The black preacher's ears perk up as he hears odd sounds echo upon the water. He begins to row closer and closer to the shore and looks to see smoke and faint light in the distance between the heavy brush. The moonlight lights up the old wooden sign of Misery Island, and beneath it a newer sign reading, "No vessels any further due to shipwreckage." The masked beings join hands and begin to circle the ring of fire while eerily chanting a Latin prayer. Each of them wear the mask of the burnt witch, and nearby on an altar are all of the animal masks lit with candles. Abrupt silence fills the beach, and only the thrashing waves lit by the moonlit hue is heard. Beads of sweat drop from the faces of the young girls as the sea breeze brings the flames closer and closer to their innocent skin. "Help! Please help!" Tabitha cries and pleads. Chapter 13. The preacher docks his rowboat along the shores and hears the calls for help. He sees a ghostly apparition of his mother standing, seemingly floating, with her arms open to him. He stares, dumbfounded, and walks to her with tears in his eyes, hugging her and then becoming transported to a different moment in time. He falls upon the sand and looks up to the old Misery Islands. A massive wooden ship with the carving "The Mayflower" written upon it towers over him. Native Americans exit their teepees and walk to the shores to investigate the boat. The preacher watches on in awe. A lookout on the boat looks to the indigenous people with bows in their hands and yells, "They have weapons!" The Puritans quickly arm themselves. Cannons begins to get launched upon the shore, and bullets are fired. A native woman and child drop to the ground dead from the stray bullets. The preacher runs to them and attempts to save them, but they are most certainly dead. The preacher looks up to now see that all of the indigenous people are dead. He sees several crates with imprisoned women and men being taken off the ship, slaves from wherever they had come. The preacher then hears a humming. He looks to the blood moon high in the sky and follows the faint projection of salt-misted light to some sort of galactic portal. The Puritans surround the portal and look to it confused. "Dark magic," they nervously yell. The leader of the group raises his hand, silencing them. Only the waves from the shore are heard. The leader walks to the portal and gazes into it. He then sees a reflection of himself, but not of his own. His fellow colonizers nervously watch on. The leader lifts his hand and reaches into the portal, then walking through it and disappearing. The Puritans then begin to rabble nervously. A hand reappears and he exits anew. Different, but the same man. He looks to the people gathered around him. He studies them. They look new to him. Something is off about this once fearless, confident leader. His colony remains quiet and fearful. He looks as if he was just born and curious to what this life is. The leader then comes back to his original state and proclaims, "Heaven exits," he says in awe. "I saw the Lord Jesus Christ, and he said to purify the earth of all of its evils, cleanse the earth of all of its sinners." His followers are cheer and cry in awe of what they've experienced. Some of the militant men then go grab torches and begin burning the lives of the innocent and imprisoned women and men being kept in wooden cages. They begin to cheer. The preacher watches on, sickened by his trip to history. "Let them go," he frantically yells, but he cannot be heard. "Let us pray." The leader of the Puritans says, while the screams of the burning accused grow louder. The preacher runs into the flames and attempts to help them, but is transported to another moment in time. He looks to a large casino being constructed on the same island. A tunnel wheels out lumber with its workers. It's sometime in the late 1800s. Time continues to travel around the preacher as he's now inside the newly built building. In a dreary concrete room, the preacher looks around to see people and descendants of the Puritan lineage with similar faces about to sacrifice young girls. "What are you?" he cries out. The imprisoned girl screams and cries out, "They're not who you think they are. They're not who they say they are. The portals are not portals. They are ships, and they are scattered everywhere throughout the world. They're preserving the planet by killing fertile young women like myself. They are not of our kind. They are from a different realm and seek colonization in this realm." The preacher stares on with large eyes. "How do you know this?" "Because I was one of them," she somberly says. "I'm sorry." The leader of the cultish group raises a dagger to her. "No!" Preacher yells. The room stops, and they all turn to him and stares. Nervousness fills him as he gazes into the masks of the animals while they all eerily peer to him. They begin to walk to him and place their hands out. Their hands all glow red light at the fingertips. A wave of hands surrounds him and come closer and then cover him. All of a sudden, the preacher is back on the sandy shores in present day. Preacher breathes heavily and fearfully looks around in shock. A light exits from his body, and it is the wizard looking to him. The preacher stares to him in awe. "Dad?" The wizard speaks. "This is not what we had thought. This is something else. You must leave." The ground shakes and thump is heard. The wizard vanishes. "Dad!" The preacher nervously looks around. The wizard snaps back to reality. Tituba nervously looks on. "What happened?" she anxiously asks. "It is not us that is using them. It is them that are using us," the wizard says. "They are here. They are here to colonize this planet because theirs is dying. They're fighting back and creating new worlds out of the fictitious ones that we created." "Where is my daughter?" the detective firmly says. The group turns to the detective. "You're all under arrest." The detective stands with his gun aimed. "Let the girls go." The cult continues to creepily remain silent. Thomas and Claudia hide with one and other in the distance. Claudia takes a deep breath and closes her eyes. She attempts to get into the minds of the cult members on the beach, but fails. Tituba runs through the tunnel of water to the island. Her young followers run behind her as well. One of the masked beings take their mask off. It is the nun, Sister Marie. "You are not a part of this, nor do we wish to harm you as of yet." "Sister Marie, why?" The preacher appears. The nun replies, "The reasoning holds a far greater purpose than one can ever know. Your race is soon coming to be extinct, and overpopulation will soon ruin you." "You can't hurt them," preacher pleads. "Police are on their way to the island," the detective says. The nun looks to O. "Detective, we cannot be stopped. We are simply control over the universal order. There, too, some things that we do not even yet understand with all of our technology." The nun puts her mask back on and turns back to the burning girls. Whack! The Minotaur beast tackles her to the ground. The group looks to them wrestling on the ground. Thomas appears behind the girls and leaps through the flames. He then unties Tabitha and Emily while there's heavy commotion. Thomas tries and tries to untie the heavy knot, but has no luck. The preacher appears behind him, his forehead beaded with sweat. He has a sharp shell in hand. He helps Thomas cut the rope. The nun raises her hand, and it glows red, sucking the energy from the man-beast and depleting it of life. It drops to the ground. Claudia feels the life being depleted, for it is her that is in control of the beast. Thomas catches her as she falls to the ground, depleted of energy. The nun rises to her feet. The group turns back to the flames to see that the girls are gone. They gasp. A cloaked figure appears out of the shadows. The cult kneels in sync to the one that is hooded like the Reaper. He steps upon a rock and begins to speak to the followers. "Upon arriving to this land, our ancestors and those before them felt that Earth was our new home, a gateway to life. They knew the richness of eternal life and how essential this world was to colonize. As we walk through the valley of death and create a bridge over the tainted blood spilt, we separate good and evil. We purify the human race by exterminating it. The Techmen species are the evolutionary force that has superseded mankind in other realms. and now we will too take over this very realm, for it is my duty to keep our species alive. The masked being removes his long, draping hood. Dr. Mystic reveals himself, and he's very much alive. He looks around to his followers. "We have to go," Thomas says to the detective. The detective ignores them and stares to Mystic and his followers. "Master, our sacrifices have been stolen," a hooded voice says. "No worries, our arrival is here," Mystic says. A great gust of wind comes from the sky. It carries a whirlwind of sand, and a portal appears. This portal is not portal, but simply an alien ship. "You must leave. They're not human." Tituba and her followers appear to warn Thomas, Claudia, and the preacher. The group turns around to run off, but the detective stops for a moment, aiming his gun to Mystic and firing. Bang! The bullet flies and hits Mystic in the head. Purple blood squirts out of the back of his head. The back of his skull lies open. Inside is mechanical parts fused with human bones and organs. The cult removes their masks and gasp in awe. They turn and look to the detective and his friends. They quickly run off back to the water tunnel in which they had come. The cult's fingertips all glow red as they begin to run after them. The group runs through the woods while anxiously looking over the shoulders. Thomas falls on the ground. Claudia quickly helps him up. All enter the tunnel, but the detective. He stops and looks to Tituba. "Where is my daughter?" Tituba looks to him. "I don't know if that is truly your daughter anymore," she says with apologetic eyes. "What we saw and what we thought deceived us. We must go." The detective looks back to see the alien cult quickly approaching through the woods towards them. He turns and follows his friends into the water tunnel. The group runs and makes their way through the tunnel. An underwater ship appears above their heads and lights the area. It uses a sonic boom to attempt to crash parts of the tunnel. Salt water splashes from the ceilings and sides of the wall. The preacher gets hit in the face with a punch of water, and his glasses fall off to the ground, breaking. Thomas helps him up, and the group continues to run. The underwater ship barely holds a shape, and simply a disc-like reflection of the water with ambient light. Pulsing then comes from it. It begins making a weird sound. The group continues to run in fear. Tituba's followers run ahead of the group. A shadow appears over their heads, and a great white shark jumps through the water tunnel with an open mouth and takes one of the young college students, pulling him into the dark ocean. More shadows swim by overhead. Thomas, Claudia, and the remaining followers make it back to the underground labyrinth to their magic shop. Tituba quickly removes the wand holding up the tunnel of water. It comes crashing down on the cult, and they begin to disintegrate. Apparently salt water is their enemy. The wall seals up behind them. The heroes look on out of breath and confused to what they had just experienced. Silence fills them. "Did we stop them?" Claudia asks. The wizard sits in the corner of the room. "It's only just begun." The preacher looks to his father and slowly approaches him. The wizard raises his hand and touches his face. A smile fills him. "I'm sorry," he says with a tear in his eye. They hear a noise upstairs, and all of their ears perk up. The detective's daughter appears with Kat. They turn the corner. He stares in awe. Her eyes fill with tears as he slowly walks towards her. They embrace one and other. A shadow appears behind them. It's the beast of a man. They look to him ready to fight. "No," Kat says, and goes by his side. "He's not a threat." "It's the governor." One of the young followers look to him, studying his face beneath his long, disheveled beard. "He took my life. They sent me to the other side, but I came back. I saw how they live. I saw what they intend to do." The messy doppelganger of Governor Brandon says, "They don't want a massive war. They want to take over subtly. Their focus is with taking the leaders of the world, gaining control of the military, and slowly making this world theirs." "What's over there?" Thomas asks. "On the other side?" "Their technology is far more advanced, and they've merged with technology," the true governor replies. "How long has he been you?" Detective O asks. "I've lost track of the years, but long enough for me to become this." He continues. "We thought they were portals, but they have ships placed throughout the world," Tituba says. "You thought right," the true governor says. "They're intertwining all of the multiverses together and making one large travelable world, similar to our different countries and continents except through time and space." "How do you know all of this?" the preacher asks. "In their world, there are the insubordinates that do not agree with their imperialistic mindset. In their world, there is a society just like ours, with followers and with rebels. The governor continues, I've had the opportunity to meet the rebels, and they've told me as much as I could comprehend. Claudia says, so, if I am from a different universe, and I've traveled to this universe to help warn you of what's to come, there has to even more of us. It's a matter of getting them together, somehow finding them, the real governor says. The problem is getting in and getting out safely. I had help. They gave me some sort of pill that would keep me molecularly bound together while traveling through world to world. What if we get more of the pills? Thomas adds. Then we can go to the portals that they opened and find people like us. I don't know how easy that will be, the governor says. The group stands dumbfounded in the lair of the magic shop. They attempt to figure out what to do, but rest seems to be the only option as of now. An abrupt explosion shakes the grounds. They all walk upstairs to look outside, and they see people storming the streets with guns and makeshift weapons. The sun is now just beginning to rise. They see people dressed in way different clothes and are obviously from a different moment in time. These people are from the 1600s. Things are really starting to not make sense anymore. Thomas nervously looks on. It turns out that James chose the right decision and exploited the conversation to the rebel journalist Eddie Light. News travels fast via social media, and the world begins turning itself upside down as a civil war again begins. Though some are completely skeptical in regards to all of this reality-shattering news. Many have already taken cameras to the Pharmatech building and broke into the underground area. They have filmed the live feed of the tunnels and have even filmed themselves disappearing into the portal to the other realm. The people are now beginning to see that reality isn't what it appears to be, nor is it otherwise. The question now is, if the dead were communicating with our new group of mystic heroes to help them, where are they? Or could be some sort of intuitive sense spoken through the energy of those we have lost and love? Could the presence and acceptance of suffering be the key to life itself and to beyond it? Misery Island lights up in the distance, and a masked being exits the portal-like ship. He removes his mask. The mayor and town priest looks to the scattered masks along the sandy shores and the dead body of Dr. Mystic. Silent anger fills him as he stares to the shores of Massachusetts in the distance. The imposter governor looks to the news on his television. He sees that James has decided to leak all of the information. The imposter governor walks out to his balcony that overlooks the Great Wall. He decided to go to China for a meeting, and he chose the right time to do so. With reality collapsing and worlds converging, the possibilities of what is to happen is endless. To be continued. Salem, Let the Witch Hunt Begin. Copyright Salem by Michael Angel Loaiza Jr. Written by Michael Angel Loaiza Jr. 2022-. All rights reserved. Lowise Za Studios.